Chapter 378. The jet-black ghostly hand stopped inches from Yunruoyan's face, and a sharp gust of ghostly energy caused the black aura around her to sway. It wasn't easy to raise you, and it'd be a pity to kill you. The ghost master retracted his hand and continued, I'll plead with the patriarch to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Yunruoyan opened her eyes and replied with lingering fear, Yes, master. You may all leave. I have something to discuss with the ghost master, Thunderflame said. Yunruoyan, Thunderflame, and Thunderflame all left the room. Brother, have you found Liamo? Thunderflame asked Thunderflame in the hallway. No, but there's news that he's been spotted nearby. I'll go take a look right now. No matter where he's hiding, I'll find him. After Thunderbolt Badian finished speaking, he turned around and walked down the small building. Mute girl, you can only prove your innocence by finding Liamo, Thunderflame said as he looked at Thunderflame's back. Inside the room, Thunderflame and the Ghost Master stood and sat. Thunderflame was the first to ask, Ghost Master, is there something wrong with your disciple? She's not my disciple at all, the Ghost Master replied. I'm afraid the mute girl is already dead. Even though Thunderflame had vaguely anticipated this outcome, he couldn't help but feel angry. He slammed his palm on the armrest of his chair. With a crack, the armrest broke in half. The Foam family sure has some tricks up their sleeves. Extreme anger caused his voice to become hoarse and unpleasant. I never thought that there would be another ghost cultivator on the Dark Abyss continent other than you and the mute girl, and a member of the Foam family no less. The Ghost Master was silent for a moment. Ghost cultivation is a secret art of the Extreme Abyss continent. The first elder of the Silver Dragon clan told me when he taught me this art. No one else on the continent except the mute girl and me would know this art, let alone the Foam family. Although the Ghost Master was Thunderflame's subordinate in name, he was actually a spy trained by the Silver Dragon clan's elder. He was also responsible for assisting Thunderflame, so both of them were actually loyal to the elder. In terms of status, they were on equal footing. Then where did this fake mute girl come from? Thunderflame asked in confusion. I don't know for now. Ghost Master pondered and said, I heard that the daughter of the Life family was bitten by a monster and poisoned with ptomaine. Ptomaine is one of the secret arts of ghost cultivation, so I went to check it out after I heard the news. When I tested the fake mute girl just now, I found that her aura was very similar to the corpse poison in Miss Lai's body. The monster that bit Miss Lai came from the Qinyuan continent, so this fake mute girl should also be from the Qinyuan continent. Perhaps they're even the same existence. You mean to say that he's in cahoots with Li Mo and Yunruoyan, and that he's pledged allegiance to the Feng family? In that case, we can't let him live. The Ghost Master nodded. According to my deductions, that is indeed the case. In such a dangerous time, she must have something important to do for her to stay in the Thunderclap family. The reason why I didn't kill her was because I wanted to see what she was up to, and maybe it would lead to the person you're looking for. That's true. Thunderclap nodded. Since he's in cahoots with Liamo, he'll definitely find a way to contact him. As long as we keep an eye on this fake mute girl, we'll definitely be able to find that traitor. How dare he betray the Thunderclap family? I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death. Thunderclap's eyes flashed with a cruel light. Ghost Master, I'll leave this matter to you. All right, but I have a request. What is it? I want this person, the Ghost Master replied. When he tested Yunruoyan, he discovered that the ghostly energy around her was different from the ghostly energy he cultivated. In fact, it seemed to be purer than his own. Ghost Masters, like the mute girl, were mortals. Since they couldn't produce ghostly energy themselves, they could only cultivate by absorbing it from the outside world. However, this ghostly energy wasn't pure, and not only was it harmful to the body, it was also harmful to one's cultivation. As a result, when the Ghost Master saw Yunruoyan, he was actually quite excited. He seemed to have found an answer to his many years of cultivation, and that answer was none other than Yunruoyan. He wanted to capture her and study her thoroughly. That night, Yunruoyan was immersed in her cultivation in her room. These past few days, she had been interacting with the ghost in a special way, and this interaction had caused Yunruoyan to come to a new understanding of the man she had once hated so much. Just as Yunruoyan was enveloping herself in ghostly energy, she suddenly felt the black spiritual energy she had condensed in a corner of her spiritual vortex move strangely. At first, Yunruoyan hadn't noticed it, but every time she used the ghostly energy, the black spiritual energy would move. Only after a few times did Yunruoyan realize that there was a connection between the two. As a result, Yunruoyan tried to channel the ball of black spiritual energy into the ghostly ring. To her surprise, she discovered that the ghostly ring could actually strengthen the power of the ghostly energy. Initially, the ghostly energy didn't have a physical form, but after being nourished by Yunruoyan a few times, it began to take on a physical form. This meant that the attack power of the ghostly energy would greatly increase. At that moment, Yunruoyan was slowly channeling the black spiritual energy from her spiritual vortex into the ghostly ring. Because of the black spiritual energy's nourishment, the ghostly energy within the ring began to grow stronger and stronger. The ghostly energy it released filled the entire bed, making it look rather eerie. Just then, a chirping sound rang out in Yunruoyan's mind. "Mistress, there's a strange aura spying on you from a corner." Yunruoyan's heart skipped a beat. She opened her bright eyes in the midst of the ghostly energy. She saw a faintly discernible shadow flash by a corner of the room, then disappear. "It's the ghost master." Yunruoyan's sensitive senses detected the aura of the ghost master. She had thought that she had managed to escape today, but she hadn't expected the ghost master to be spying on her from the shadows. "Cho-cho, it looks like I'm being watched," Yunruoyan murmured, a little discouraged. "Mistress, the current situation doesn't permit you to take any more risks. You have to think of a way to escape." Yunruoyan wasn't the type to drag things out. After a moment's thought, she made a decision. "You're right. Since I've already been seen through, I shouldn't stay here and let them find out where I'm weak." She had originally planned to use her identity as a mute to infiltrate the Thunderflame household and find out the whereabouts of her father, Long Yin. She hadn't expected to be exposed so quickly. If she were caught, not only would she not be able to achieve her goal, but she would also bring trouble to Liemo and the Feng family. Yunruoyan stopped cultivating, and the ghostly energy returned to the ghostly ring on her finger. She then lifted the curtains and got off the bed. "Mistress, you're not going to leave just like that, are you?" Cho-cho asked. "I've sensed the auras of quite a few experts outside, and they're all at least 9th rank blade masters. I'm afraid I won't be able to escape." Yunruoyan hadn't sensed any other experts outside, and she couldn't help but pause when she heard Cho-cho's words. She had intended to release her ghostly energy to stall the ghost master and escape, but she had no choice but to change her plans after hearing Cho-cho's words. "Looks like I'll have to ask for help." Yunruoyan sighed. "Who?" Cho-cho asked. "Mistress, did the Feng family leave a helper here?" Yunruoyan didn't answer Cho-cho's question. Instead, she tidied up her clothes and walked out of the room. Yunruoyan knew that she had been exposed, but the fact that Thunderflame hadn't attacked her meant that he wanted something from her. Yunruoyan expected that, as long as she didn't try to escape, the people watching her wouldn't do anything to her. As a result, Yunruoyan leisurely strolled along the corridor, as if she couldn't sleep at night. As she walked, she looked around. The Thunderflame family's ruthless methods not only earned them a fearsome reputation, but also brought them many enemies. As a result, the Thunderflame family's defenses had always been excellent. Although there seemed to be nothing around the inn, in fact, there was a restriction in the air to prevent people from entering on swords. As a result, anyone who wanted to enter or leave the inn had to go through the main entrance. In the courtyard, there were 3 groups of warriors patrolling the grounds day and night. Even a fly wouldn't be able to escape. Yunruoyan retracted her gaze and strolled all the way to Thunderflame's room. "Thunderflame, are you asleep?" Yunruoyan stopped in front of Thunderflame's door and called out in a hoarse, mute voice. Cultivators were usually more alert, and before Yunruoyan could call out a second time, the room lit up. "I just fell asleep. Wait a moment, I'll be out in a moment." Thunderflame's voice came from within the room. Not long after, he opened the door, wearing a loose nightgown. "What's the matter, mute girl?" Thunderbolt rubbed his eyes, looking as if he hadn't just fallen asleep, but had been woken from his deep slumber. He smiled bitterly at Yunruoyan. "Don't tell me you're only seeing me off in the middle of the night." Thunderflame had only told Thunderflame today that he would return to Thunderflame alone the next day. "I haven't had a chance to thank you for speaking up for me in front of the family head." Yunruoyan found a random excuse. "Come in and talk." Thunderflame smiled and opened the door. Yunruoyan shook her head. "Come out and walk with me. It's too stuffy in here." "All right." Thunderflame didn't hesitate and walked out of the room. Thunderflame followed Yunruoyan along the railing. "Second young master, have you always treated me as a friend?" Naturally, she was referring to the mute girl. Chapter 379. "Of course," Thunderbolt replied. "Ever since I was young, everyone by my side has treated me like a master. Only you treat me like a commoner, and I'm the only one who can talk to you." Yunruoyan was silent for a moment. She really hadn't expected Thunderbolt to be good friends with the mute girl, and from what Thunderbolt had told her, Yunruoyan understood that the mute girl wasn't an unpardonably evil person. The image of the mute girl being chopped down by the ghostly blade, revealing her shriveled face and 2 pitch-black eyes, suddenly appeared in Yunruoyan's mind. This made her feel vexed, and she began to feel a sense of loathing for killing that she had never felt before. However, this sense of loathing only lasted for an instant. In reality, when someone raised a butcher's knife against you, you didn't even have time to consider whether they were good or bad, or whether they deserved to be killed. Rather, if you didn't kill them, they'd kill you. In that case, I'll get rid of you before you do anything to me, no matter what kind of person you are. The moon's bright today. Let's take a walk around the courtyard, Yunruoyan suggested. The house was made of wood, and there were plenty of places to hide in the corridor. Yunruoyan planned to lure Thunderbolt to an open space so that she could put some distance between herself and the people who were watching her. "All right," Thunderbolt agreed. The 2 of them walked to the railing in front of them. Yunruoyan walked down the stairs, and Thunderbolt followed. "Mistress, the Ghost Master followed you down, but the experts aren't here yet," Chucho reported to Yunruoyan from time to time. Yunruoyan and Thunderbolt arrived at the courtyard. The entire inn had been booked by the Thunderbolt family, and there were warriors patrolling the courtyard from time to time. When they saw the 2 of them, they didn't pay them any mind and continued patrolling. "Mute girl." Thunderbolt suddenly stopped and called out. Yunruoyan also stopped and turned to look at Thunderbolt. Under the moonlight, he was dressed in a nightgown, his fiery red hair like a flame in the dark night. "This time, I feel like you're different from before, but I can't quite put my finger on what's different." Thunderbolt's clear and bright eyes were a little dazed at this moment. "Although I haven't seen your face for many years, you've always been as close to me as you were when I was young. But this time, I feel like you're a stranger, but I also want to get closer to you. Although your voice is still mute, the way you speak and the feeling you give me is very similar to the person I've been thinking about. This feeling is really strange. Are you saying that I'm like Yunruoyan? You must be out of your mind." Yunruoyan turned around and continued walking. "Yeah." Thunderbolt laughed self-deprecatingly before catching up to Yunruoyan. "So this is what it feels like to like someone, to always see her in others." Mute girl, don't you think I'm silly? It's quite silly. Yun Ruoyan averted her gaze. You've only met her a few times, so why are you so hung up on her? She's probably sick of you. Your tone sounds just like her. Thunderbolt stopped walking once more. He looked at Yun Ruoyan's petite figure and paused for a moment before suddenly asking, Mute girl, can you let me see your face? Yun Ruoyan turned around to look at the youth once more, but the youth's gaze was also growing more and more confused. In order to conceal her identity, Yun Ruoyan had tried her best to speak as little as possible in front of Thunderbolt. Now that she had decided to leave, she couldn't help but speak a little more. She hadn't expected Thunderbolt to be so observant as to notice that something was amiss. Mistress, the Ghost Master is hiding in the canopy of a nearby tree, and those warriors have also followed him. They're hiding behind a fake mountain on the left, a shrub on the right, and a tree not far ahead, Chocho reported. It didn't know how Yun Ruoyan was going to escape from such a tight encirclement, so it could only give her a detailed report of the enemy's situation. Mute girl, can I see your face? Thunderbolt took a step forward, his hand involuntarily lifting slightly. Yun Ruoyan's eyes sparkled as she looked at Thunderbolt. After a long while, she finally said, All right, I'll do as you wish. Then she took off the black cloth covering her face, revealing her true appearance. Under the moonlight, it was a face that shone even more brightly than a spirit crystal. Even though she was expressionless and just staring at him silently, Thunderbolt's heart skipped a beat. It's you, Yun Ruoyan. Thunderbolt's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the person in front of him. The person he had been thinking about day and night had suddenly appeared in front of him, as if by magic. For a moment, Thunderbolt forgot everything else. He subconsciously took another step forward, wanting to reach out and touch Yun Ruoyan to prove that the person in front of him wasn't an illusion. But Yun Ruoyan took Thunderbolt's outstretched hand and burrowed into his chest, wrapping her arms around him. One of Yun Ruoyan's arms was around Thunderbolt's waist, and the other was placed on his chest, forming a very intimate position. However, what no one else could see was that Yun Ruoyan's hand, which was placed on Thunderbolt's chest, was actually holding a black dagger. Don't move. Yun Ruoyan's voice was low and threatening. I won't move. Thunderbolt was half a head taller than Yun Ruoyan, and he looked down at Yun Ruoyan in his arms. Mute girl, how could it be you? When did you start pretending to be a mute girl? From the moment you appeared, I've been a mute girl, Yun Ruoyan whispered into Thunderbolt's ear. Its formless body instantly took on a corporeal form thanks to the nourishment of the black spiritual energy. The ghostly blade in its hand also became much sharper. What's going on? How did it become so strong? The Ghost Master's expression changed as the ghostly figure raised its blade and slashed at him. The Ghost Master's body blurred as he hurriedly dodged the ghostly figure's attack. Then, he appeared behind the ghostly figure, raised a black ghostly hand, and plunged it into the ghostly figure's body. The ghostly figure's body immediately began to emit a thick layer of corpse energy, which flowed along the Ghost Master's hand and into his body. Although the Ghost Master cultivated in ghostly arts, he was still a human, and this level of corpse energy wasn't something that his body could withstand. He hurriedly pulled his hand out of the ghostly figure's body, but the ghostly energy seemed to be some sort of glue-like substance that connected the Ghost Master's hand and the ghostly figure's body, continuing to spread. The chilly energy burrowed into the Ghost Master's body, and the Ghost Master, who had been immersed in ghostly arts for more than 20 years, couldn't help but panic. He hurriedly pulled out a black dagger and slashed at the ghostly energy. The Ghost Master finally broke free of the ghostly energy binding the ghostly figure's body. The limited amount of ghostly energy that had clung to the ghostly hand quickly burrowed into the Ghost Master's body. However, given the Ghost Master's cultivation, this bit of ghostly energy wouldn't be enough to cause him any harm. If he didn't cut off the connection in time and attracted too much corpse energy, he would suffer. Without giving the ghost master a chance to catch his breath, the ghostly figure turned around and slashed at the ghost master once more. In a flash, the ghost master disappeared. Thunderflame, who had not used a weapon all this time, pulled out a snow-white greatsword and hacked down on the icicle. The icicle was shattered by the greatsword and fragments of ice scattered in all directions. It was as though snow and ice had fallen from the sky. When the icicle was completely destroyed by Thunderflame, he looked up to find that the black-robed figure who had attacked him was nowhere to be seen. Yunruoyan and Li Mo were also nowhere to be seen. Thunderflame bellowed, his voice shaking half of the darkest land. Li Mo brought Yunruoyan back into the cavern. Yunruoyan was in Li Mo's arms, gulping down mouthfuls of blood. She could no longer keep her eyes open, and it looked like she was about to collapse. Yen, don't sleep. Open your eyes. Li Mo called out to Yunruoyan as he tried to infuse spiritual energy into her body, only to find that her meridians had been completely severed. Brotherly, the spiritual herbs are here. Feng Yicheng hurriedly brought over all sorts of spiritual herbs. Li Mo took them and fed them to Yunrongyan, but they all came gushing out of her mouth. Li Mo, who would remain calm even if the sky were to collapse, was now trembling, his face pale, and an unprecedented sense of fear and despair welled up in his heart. Fengbo is here, Fengbo is here. Feng Yicheng hurriedly pulled Fengbo over to Li Mo's side. Quick, let Fengbo take a look at Miss Yun. Fengbo sighed. Her spiritual vortex is completely shattered, and her meridians are all severed. I've never seen anyone survive such severe injuries. No, Yen will live. Li Mo hugged Yunruoyan tightly in his arms. She'll definitely live. Uncle Feng, just try everything you can. Stop Miss Yun's bleeding first, said Feng Yicheng. All right. Fengbo used his powerful spiritual energy to seal Yunruoyan's internal bleeding, and she finally stopped vomiting blood. What happens next will depend on her own luck, said Count of Wind. The next day, when Feng Yicheng received news that the Thunder family was about to leave, he immediately brought a group of warriors to the inn. He was clearly there to cause trouble. The inn's fire burned for an entire night before it was extinguished. Almost all the buildings in the inn had been turned to ashes. Feng Yicheng stood outside the inn's door and looked at the terrible state inside. He couldn't help but sigh, this Miss Yun is really generous. Young Master Feng, you have to help me. As soon as the innkeeper saw Feng Yicheng, he immediately threw himself at his feet. I've paid a large sum of money to the Feng family every year, and now all of the money I've accumulated over my lifetime has been reduced to ashes. You have to help me. Innkeeper, calm down. Feng Yicheng immediately pulled the old man up. I don't know how the fire started, but if it's a natural disaster, the Feng family will help you rebuild your business. All I know is that this inn was burned down because of the Thunder family, and the Feng family is the manager of this place. You have to compensate for the damage, or you won't be allowed to leave. Feng Yicheng's voice was loud, and as soon as he finished speaking, the dozen or so warriors he had brought with him immediately blocked the entrance to the inn. What, do you want to fight? Yesterday, Pai Batian had made a wasted trip, and today, he found out that Yunruoyan had pretended to be a mute girl and burned down the inn. Feng Yicheng, on the other hand, had come looking for trouble, so he wasn't afraid at all. Moreover, on the surface, the Thunder family didn't seem to be in the right. Just as the two groups were about to start a fight, Thunderflame's voice came from one of the carriages. Tian, we'll accept this debt. Father. No need to say anything more. Let's hurry, Thunderflame ordered. Yes. No matter how indignant Pai Batian was, he had no choice but to suppress his anger. Master Pai, you're indeed a reasonable man. Feng Yicheng smiled sincerely. How much do you need? Pai Badian resisted the urge to punch Feng Yicheng in the face. Normally, it's impossible to build an inn without at least 10,000 spirit crystals. Feng Yicheng counted with his fingers. Feng Yicheng counted on his fingers. Also, it will take at least half a year to rebuild it. This will cost at least 5,000 spirit stones. Including the management fee, it will be 5,000 spirit stones. Just give me 20,000 spirit stones. You're robbing me. Pai Badian gritted his teeth. Young Master Pai, how can you say that? The last time you were in the Carefree Cave, you spent 10,000 spirit crystal stones to buy 3 women. 20,000 spirit crystal stones is only the price of 6 women to the Pai clan. If outsiders knew that the Thunder family was so generous in buying girls, but so stingy in compensating others for their losses, it wouldn't be good for the Thunder family's reputation. Not only was she alive, but she was also constantly repairing herself. Fengbua, what happened to Ruoyan? Liamo also knew how to read a person's pulse, but as the saying went, too much concern leads to confusion. He always trusted the results of others more than others. Her life's no longer in danger, Count of the Wind replied. As for when she'll wake up, I can't say for sure, but it's only a matter of time. 5 days after Count of the Wind's words, Yun Ruoyan finally opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was a haggard Li Mo had prepared a basin of warm water for Yun Ruoyan to wash. He knew that Yun Ruoyan loved cleanliness, and that she would bathe 3 times a day at home, and at least once a day at Kongming Academy. However, ever since she had arrived on the Qingyuan continent, Yun Ruoyan hadn't had a chance to soak in a warm bath. Liamo had wanted to prepare a bathtub for her to soak in, but Count of the Wind had said that Yun Ruoyan's current condition wasn't suitable for her to be moved. When Li Mo's towel touched Yun Ruoyan's sensitive spots, she suddenly muttered, "It tickles." Liamo immediately stopped what he was doing and turned his gaze from Yun Ruoyan's smooth body to her face. Yun Ruoyan's face was serene, and her somewhat dry lips were slightly parted, but she showed no signs of speaking. Liamo thought that he had heard wrongly. He sighed and continued what he was doing. When his towel touched Yun Ruoyan's sensitive spots again, she opened her eyes. Liamo, don't touch there. It's ticklish. Yun Ruoyan spoke very clearly. When Liamo raised his head again, he saw Yun Ruoyan's bright eyes. Yen, you're finally awake. Li Mo's face, which had been cold for nearly 10 days, finally broke into a smile. 2 days later, Yun Ruoyan's body had mostly recovered, and her astonishing regenerative abilities left Count of the Wind in awe. These past few days, Liamo had been meticulously taking care of Yun Ruoyan. However, ever since Yun Ruoyan had woken up and smiled at him, he had been treating her coldly. This time, Liamo was truly angry. He was angry that Yun Ruoyan's impulsiveness had placed him in danger time and time again, angry that he was always a step too late when Yun Ruoyan was in danger, and angry that he was powerless when Yun Ruoyan was unconscious. That night, Liamo watched as Yun Ruoyan drank her medicine and prepared to leave. These past few days, he had been sleeping in separate rooms with Yun Ruoyan. Liamo, don't go. Don't be angry at me again, alright? Yun Ruoyan reached out to pull on Li Mo's arm, but he remained unmoved. In fact, he even turned his gaze away from her. You've broken your promise. You promised that you wouldn't put yourself in danger, Liamo said. It's all my fault for making you worry again. Can you punish me, but don't ignore me? Yun Ruoyan tugged on Li Mo's arm and whined. My head hurts. Yen, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Liamo had fallen for her trick and hurriedly bent down to check her condition. Yen, what's wrong? Where are you feeling unwell? Liamo had indeed fallen for her trick. He hurriedly bent down to examine her, his tone full of anxiety. Yun Ruoyan took her hand away and smiled at Li Mo mischievously. Li Mo froze for a moment, and his anxiety turned to anger. However, before he could react, Yun Ruoyan's soft arms circled around Li Mo's neck, tightly binding him to her. Li Mo, don't be angry, all right? Yun Ruoyan wrinkled her nose. I'm fine, aren't I? What if something were to happen to you? Li Mo asked coldly as he tried to pry Yun Ruoyan's hands off his neck. This time, Li Mo was determined to change Yun Ruoyan's willful personality. Yun Ruoyan used all the strength in her body to hold on to Li Mo. When Li Mo increased his strength, Yun Ruoyan's mouth twitched, and her eyes turned misty. Li Mo, don't be angry. Don't abandon me, all right? Yun Ruoyan whimpered. To Li Mo, there was nothing more damaging than Yun Ruoyan's tears. Each drop of her tears was like a pebble, causing ripples in Li Mo's calm heart. Li Mo suppressed his heartache for Yun Ruoyan and asked coldly, do you know your mistake? Yes. Yun Ruoyan sniffled. I know my mistake. Will you still be so disobedient in the future? No, I won't. Li Mo frowned, a look of disbelief on his face. Yun Ruoyan immediately pointed a finger to the heavens and swore, I, Yun Ruoyan, swear that if I disobey you in the future and do anything dangerous, I'll. Before she could finish her sentence, Li Mo's warm, moist lips silenced her. Yun Ruoyan's slightly dry lips were like a flower in a drought, basking in Li Mo's warmth. No matter how long they kissed, it couldn't dispel Li Mo's worry and longing for Yun Ruoyan over the past 10 days. He wanted nothing more than to melt the woman in his arms into his own body, to become one with him forever. Li Mo. Yun Ruoyan called out in between their lips. Li Mo could hear the weakness in Yun Ruoyan's voice. Suppressing his desire for her, he finally left her. Yun Ruoyan's cheeks were pink, and her dry lips were pink as well. Her neck and shoulders were pink as well. She looked like a pink flower petal that had just bloomed. Li Mo hugged the soft petal in his arms, then slowly tightened his grip. I should have done this to you. Li Mo sighed. I'm sorry, I made you worry again. Yun Ruoyan could clearly feel the fright she had given Li Mo. You really scared me to death, you know? I know. Yun Ruoyan placed her chin on Li Mo's shoulder and gently rubbed it, then planted a kiss on his cheek. I'll definitely listen to you in the future. Don't scare me again, got it? Yes, Li Mo. Yes. Don't move. I'm so sleepy, and I want to sleep like this for a while. Gradually, Yun Ruoyan's breathing sounded by Li Mo's ear. To Li Mo, this sound was like the best music in the world. Finally able to relax, Li Mo subconsciously closed his eyes. In the secret chamber of Thunderflame's bedroom in the city lord's mansion of Pi City, Thunderflame was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. At this moment, his upper body was bare as a beam of light from the sky-turning mirror struck his back. Thunderflame's face turned from green to white, then red, then back to normal. He opened his mouth slightly, and a small trickle of dark red blood dripped down from the corner of his mouth. Thunderflame opened his eyes and an icy blue light flashed across his pupils. Your wounds have healed, and all the blood clots have been removed. The light from the sky-turning mirror disappeared, replaced by a white-robed elder, the first elder of the Silver Dragons. Chapter 383. Thank you, First Elder. Thunderflame stood up from his cushion and bowed to the First Elder. He'd sustained severe injuries from his battle with Yun Ruoyan, and although they weren't obvious on the surface, they were all internal injuries that were slowly worsening. This was why he'd rushed back to Thunderbolt City to seek the First Elder's help. After more than 10 days and 7 or 8 treatments, he'd finally fully recovered. Yun Ruoyan's ability to injure you to this extent is truly shocking. The First Elder's voice rang out from the mirror, and Thunderflame's face reddened. Yun Ruoyan and he were on two completely different levels. Logically speaking, his 5 fingers should have been more than enough to flatten Yun Ruoyan, but he'd failed
With
to
a
do
little more
so
effort,
twice,
you'll be
and
able
this
to reach
time,
4th level
he'd
in less than
sustained
10
severe
days.
injuries. The next
This
time
was an
we
embarrassment
encounter that
to the
person,
head of the
we'll be able
Thunderbolt
to
family,
contend against
the
him,
hegemon
said
of the
the Silver
Netherworld
Dragon
continent.
Great Elder. First Elder,
Thank you. Do you
Grand
really
Elder.
think that Yun Rongyan won't die?
Thunderflame excitedly bowed to the
Thunderflame
blurry
asked the
figure in the
First Elder once
sky-flipping
more.
mirror. This
The
was
Grand
the
Elder's
third time
figure
he'd
finally
asked this
disappeared
question,
from the
and the First
heaven-flipping
Elder's
mirror.
answer had always been
Thunderflame
no.
straightened his body and
This time
straightened
was
his
no
robe.
exception. The respectful
Are you
expression
doubting my
on his
judgment?
face had completely
The First Elder
disappeared.
countered unhappily.
Once again,
No,
he became the
that's not it.
iron-blooded,
Thunderflame
cruel,
hurriedly
and insufferably
replied.
arrogant Thunderflame clan
Thunderflame
patriarch.
hurriedly said,
It's just that with
Thunderflame
her
wasn't a direct
cultivation,
descendant
it's
of the
almost
Thunderflame
impossible for her
family,
to survive
and he didn't
such
have
a
the
serious
qualifications
injury.
to become the head of the
My
Thunderflame
injuries
family.
weren't as serious as hers.
In addition,
and I still
his
needed
cultivation
the Great Elder's
wasn't
help to
particularly
recover.
high,
So he wasn't
it's
a
hard to
prominent
imagine
figure
how
in the
she could
Thunderflame
survive.
family when he was young.
Because she has the
But one
bloodline of a
time,
demonic
he
dragon in her
accidentally
veins.
obtained the sky-flipping mirror
The
and made
greatest
contact
talent of
with
the
the
demonic
Silver
dragons
Dragons
is their ability
who
to
lived
heal
on a
themselves.
high-ranked continent.
As long
The
as you
Silver
keep her
Dragon
breathing,
Elder
she
happened
won't
to be
die
looking
so
for subordinates
easily.
on a low-ranked continent.
I see,
So he accepted
Thunderflame
Thunderflame.
nodded.
I
The
didn't want to
Silver
injure her
Dragon
too
Elder
severely,
injected Silver
so I
Dragon
didn't dare
blood
to
into
use too much
Thunderflame's
force.
body to raise his cultivation
That gave her
talent
the
and raise
opportunity
his status
to.
in the family.
There won't be much of a future.
He then sent a ghostly
The
master
First
to
Elder's
assist
voice turned
Thunderflame.
cold.
In addition,
Thunderflame, you're one of my
himself
most
was a
capable
vicious and
subordinates,
merciless man.
but I'm very dissatisfied
In just
with
a
your
decade or
performance
so,
recently.
he had risen from an
I'll give
unknown
you 10
scion
more
of the
days to bring
Thunderflame
Yin
family
Ruoyan
to
to the
me,
head of the
or
family.
don't ever appear before me again.
Then, he used a series
Yes,
of cruel and
First
ruthless
Elder.
methods to expand the
After hearing the
Thunderflame
Great
family's
Elder's
influence.
Thunderflame,
Finally,
who had always been
he had become
insufferably
a dominant
arrogant in front of
force in the
outsiders,
Thunderflame family.
bowed his back and a layer of sweat
Thunderflame
appeared on
walked
his
out
forehead.
of the secret chamber.
I will wait for
Just
your
as
good
he
news.
sat down on the main seat,
said
a
the
gust
Silver
of cold
Dragon
wind
Elder.
blew in from outside.
Then, the surface
A
of the
black,
sky-turning mirror
ghostly
began to
figure
shake.
appeared by Thunderflame's side.
The Great Elder's figure in the mirror
Ghostly
began
Master,
to slowly
have
fade
you found
away.
out where Yun Ruoyan and
Grand
Liam
Elder.
are?
Thunderflame
asked.
suddenly thought of something and called out to the
I
sky
found out
mirror.
that they're currently recuperating
What
in one of the
else?
Feng Manor's residences.
Both times I tried to capture
the ghostly
Yun Ruoyan,
master's
a
raspy
black-robed
voice
man
rang out.
appeared, and his
This
cultivation
Yun
was no
Ruoyan
lower than
truly
mine.
isn't an ordinary person.
I've injected some more Silver
Despite her
Dragon blood
injuries,
into your body
she's almost
this time.
fully recovered in less than a
You've
month.
already broken through to
The
mid-third
demonic
level.
dragon clan was an all-powerful existence on the upper continents 1,000 years ago. Naturally, they are no small matter. Otherwise, the Silver Dragon Elders wouldn't have been unable to exterminate them after 1,000 years. Thunderflame wasn't surprised by the Silver Dragon Elder's explanation. But now that we know where she is, we can't give her another chance to escape. This time, we must plan a proper plan to capture her. Thunderflame told the ghostly master about the 10-day deadline that the Elder had given him. Now that Yun Ruoyan and Liemo have the support of the Feng family, we have to avoid them. The black-robed man who came to Yun Ruoyan and Liemo's rescue must be a hidden expert of the Feng family, so it's best if we avoid a direct confrontation with him. 10 days should be enough time for us to make our move. In one of the Feng Manor's residences, Yun Ruoyan and the Lin sisters sat around Lin Tianming, chatting. Lin Tianming's complexion was much better after this period of recuperation, but the damage he had suffered over the past 10 days had severely damaged his constitution. It seemed impossible for him to fully recover for the time being. "Uncle, I'm sure grandfather will be very happy to see you again," Lin Qingxue murmured regretfully. "If only I could send him a letter right now." Kongming Academy would only reopen the all-seeing mirror's vortex gate after 3 years, which meant that they would have to wait 3 years before they could return to the Qinyuan continent. Lin Qingxue looked at the withered leaves in the courtyard and counted on her fingers. It was early spring when we arrived, and it's already autumn. After this year, we'll only be able to return to the Qinyuan continent in 2 years. I miss grandfather so much, and I wonder how he's doing. Lin Qingxue leaned against Yun Ruoyan for comfort, and Yun Ruoyan patted her cheek. "Ling will take good care of grandfather. Don't worry. As his son, I'm the most unfilial of all." Lin Qingxue's words caused Lin Tianming's heart to ache. "I haven't been filial for more than a decade, and he's worried about me day and night." During this period of time, the Lin sisters and Yun Ruoyan had told Lin Tianming quite a bit about what had happened to the Lin family and the Qinyuan continent. Although they had described the Lin family situation in a positive light, Lin Tianming still felt quite sad. Once father returns to the Lin manor, we'll be even more prosperous. Lin Qingchen brought a blanket over Lin Tianming's legs. Yes, the Lin family will only get better with all of you around. Lin Tianming's heart was filled with hope as she looked at the three beautiful girls surrounding her. Over the past few days, Liemo had been dragged around the Feng capital by Feng Yicheng. He had even found a rather grand manor for Liemo and Yun Ruoyan, claiming that it was a reward from the Feng family, but Liemo had rejected the offer. Neither he nor Yun Ruoyan liked crowds, and the Slaughtering King's manor on the Qinyuan continent had always been built in a secluded location. Naturally, he didn't like such a large manor in the middle of the city. However, the Feng manor was rather secluded, and the Lin sisters and Yun Ruoyan all liked it, so Liemo requested it. Feng Yicheng naturally agreed without hesitation. As long as Liemo and Yun Ruoyan could stay in the Feng capital, he would agree to any request Liemo made. Liemo had gained some understanding of the Feng capital over the past few days. Compared to Thunderbolt City, the Feng capital's environment was much more relaxed, and the citizens lived and worked in peace. Liemo had also learned that the Feng capital was probably the wealthiest of the 7 cities, and that the quality of life there was also the highest. If they wanted to survive on the abyssal continent for a long time, the Feng capital was naturally the best choice. At noon, Feng Yicheng brought Liemo to a restaurant. Although the two of them had long since reached the point where they could abstain from eating, they couldn't help but lust for good food. Liemo didn't mind this, but Feng Yicheng was very particular about it. Liemo could tell that the brocade-robed family had a high standard of living. Brotherly, that manor is indeed quite secluded, but the security measures aren't easy to set up, Feng Yicheng commented as he poured wine for Liemo. The manor was backed by a mountain, and there was water on both sides. It wasn't the best place to set up a barrier, and it was in a sparsely populated area. Moreover, it was in a sparsely populated area. If something happened, it would take some time to dispatch people over. Liemo didn't respond, so Feng Yicheng continued, "How about this? I'll discuss it with the patriarch and assign a dozen or so warriors to ensure your safety." "Thank you, Brother Feng, and the patriarch, for your kind intentions." Liemo raised his cup and toasted Feng Yicheng. After finishing his cup, Liemo turned his gaze to the street. There were quite a few people on the street, and there were even stalls set up on both sides of the street. Liemo couldn't help but smile warmly. When Yun Ruoyan's body was a little stronger, he would be able to take her on a stroll around the Wind City. Just then, a familiar figure appeared in the crowd, Shuo Yifeng. Shuo Yifeng wasn't the only familiar figure. Behind him was Qin Feng, and both of them were accompanied by an elderly man in brocade robes, Count of the Wind. Feng Yicheng followed Liemo's gaze and saw Count of the Wind, Shuo Yifeng, and Qin Feng. He smiled. Count of the Wind is assisting the patriarch in managing the safety of the entire Feng capital. Brother Li's 2 friends are now his good helpers. Chapter 384. While Yun Ruoyan and Liemo were in the dark, Shuo Yifeng had rescued Lin Qingchen and Qin Feng with the help of the Feng family, then reunited with Lin Tianming and Lin Qingxue in Wind City. Shuo Yifeng hadn't been idling around while he was waiting for Yun Ruoyan and Liemo. Apart from his daily cultivation, he had also become very familiar with the guards of Wind City. The guards of Wind City were generally between 9th rank and peak swordsmen, and in order to raise his cultivation, Shuo Yifeng had sought out opponents from among them. From his initial cultivation level, which was below average among the guards, he quickly improved to above average. This made the guards treat him differently. Therefore, although he didn't officially become a guard of the city, he was allowed to stay with the guards and often patrolled the city with them. Qin Feng had already been a 9th rank swordsman when he was still a tutor at Kongming Academy, but his cultivation hadn't improved much over the past few years. As a result, he had joined Zhuori Feng's squad and trained with the guards, hoping that it would be of some help to his own cultivation. By the time Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo arrived at Wind City, the two of them had already been part of the city's guards for a month. If there weren't any major changes, the two of them would soon become members of the guard squad. Uncle really likes Zhuori Feng, Feng Yicheng replied. He says that not only is he diligent, but he's also quite talented. He wants to take him in as a disciple, but Zhuori Feng says that he already has a master. Feng Yicheng said with some pity, Uncle's cultivation is one of the best in the entire Nether Abyss continent. Even I wanted to become his disciple, but he didn't like me. Zhuori Feng is such a pity. As Li Mo looked at Zhuori Feng's back, he couldn't help but think of Su Bei. Before entering the dark abyss, Su Bei had sought out Li Mo and begged him to take good care of Zhuori Feng. He had even said that if Zhuori Feng managed to return to Wind City, there was a high chance that he would reunite with him. Although Li Mo didn't mind Zhuori Feng's hatred for him too much, it would be a good thing if he could resolve this misunderstanding. Zhuori Feng and Qin Feng followed the Count of Wind to the places that needed special attention in Wind City. After explaining some things that needed attention, they returned to the city guard's encampment in Wind City. It was a rather large courtyard. After entering the courtyard, Qin Feng went directly to the drill grounds to participate in the training, while Zhuori Feng followed the Count of Wind to the courtyard where the Count of Wind was resting. How's the whip technique I taught you yesterday? Count of Wind asked as soon as he entered the courtyard. I'm already familiar with it. As Zhuori Feng spoke, he walked to an empty space in the courtyard and retrieved a black whip from his pocket. This was the whip he'd obtained from Kongming Academy's southern tower before entering the Qinyuan continent. The Grand Elder had previously given him a whip technique manual, but he had never had the time to practice it, so the whip had been left unused in his space ring. Not long ago, Zhuori Feng had been sparring with a whip-wielding warrior on the drill grounds. Zhuori Feng had recalled the whip and taken it out. Even though he'd never practiced it before, Zhuori Feng had managed to imitate the warrior's movements on the spot and had managed to fight him to a standstill. Count of Wind, who happened to be passing by, saw this scene and offered to teach Zhuori Feng whip-wielding skills. Zhuori Feng used his movement technique and smoothly demonstrated the whip technique. After Count of Wind saw it, he nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "There are no problems with the movements and moves. You can combine it with your spirit force attack during the process. This way, the power will be greatly increased." He took out a whip of his own and demonstrated it to Zhuori Feng. The whip in Count of Wind's hand, which had been infused with wood-attuned spiritual energy, suddenly sprouted sharp spikes that pierced through the air, instantly increasing the attack's power by a level. Zhuori Feng couldn't help but be stunned. It wasn't uncommon to infuse spiritual energy into a weapon during a battle, but this was the first time Zhuori Feng had seen something as shocking as the Count of Winds. "You try it too," Count of the Wind said to Zhuori Feng after he finished his set of whip techniques. Zhuori Feng nodded and imitated the Count of Wind by infusing his spiritual energy into the whip. At the same time, he began to demonstrate his whip technique. However, after the spiritual energy entered the whip, Zhuori Feng had a very strange feeling. His spiritual energy seemed to have fallen into a bottomless pit. There wasn't even an echo. After performing the whip technique, he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy, but there was no effect at all. Zhuori Feng was puzzled as he put away the whip. "Don't worry." The Count of Wind encouraged Zhuori Feng. "This also requires a long period of practice to allow your spiritual energy to fuse well with the whip to form a powerful attack. You've already done a good job." After hearing the Count of Wind's words, Zhuori Feng's doubts were dispelled and he nodded. "I'll definitely practice diligently. Thank you for your guidance." Zhuori Feng had already clearly told the Count of Wind that he wouldn't take him as his master, but the Count of Wind still taught him with all his heart. Zhuori Feng couldn't help but feel grateful, but in his heart, he had already regarded the black-robed man that Su Bei had disguised as his master. After half a year of arduous struggle, Yunruoyan's group finally managed to temporarily live a peaceful life in Wind City, and their bodies and minds were temporarily nurtured. But at the same time, the Pi father and son, as well as the Ghost Master, were hatching a plan to capture Yunruoyan alive. This time, the Ghost Master will be the vanguard. He'll be responsible for scouting out the situation and understanding the layout of the guards in Wind City, Thunderbolt Badian said. I'll lead 50 warriors disguised as a merchant caravan and enter Wind City. Our people have already arranged a place for us to stay in Wind City, so let's settle down first. 3 days from now, it'll be the Feng Patriarch's 40th birthday. Not only will the entire city be celebrating, but the other city lords will also be there to offer their congratulations, and will definitely need a lot of manpower. The Feng family's business has been too extensive these past few years, and we don't have enough warriors to use. On that day, Yunruoyan's group will definitely lack protection. As long as we can lure Liemo away, we'll be able to capture Yunruoyan. After hearing Thunderflame's plan, he turned to the Ghost Master and asked, Ghost Master, are you sure that Yunruoyan's injuries haven't completely healed? He'd fought Yunruoyan before, and he knew how powerful she was. Not only was her cultivation high, but she also possessed a bravery that couldn't be ignored. That day at the inn, her barbaric fighting style had already made her famous among the Pi family's warriors. Not only that, but when the two of them were competing in terms of spiritual energy, the strange spiritual energy that suddenly surged out of her body had left Thunderflame unable to fathom it. After a few days of observation, I'm certain that although Yunruoyan's body has recovered, her cultivation hasn't fully recovered, the Ghost Master said. Earlier, when he'd been investigating the residence, he'd seen Yunruoyan practicing her external spiritual techniques by herself. However, she'd failed a few times, which was why he'd been so sure of himself. Thunderflame no longer doubted the Ghost Master's words. After all, Yunruoyan had suffered such heavy injuries. Even if the Silver Dragon Elder had said that she possessed the demonic dragon bloodline, it was still impossible for her cultivation to recover so quickly. Otherwise, she would truly be a freak of nature. All right. In that case, we'll act according to Tian Er's plan, Thunderflame concluded. The Ghost Master immediately set off for Wind City, while Thunderflame began selecting a few experts from the City Lord's manor. He then had the bearded steward prepare a convoy of carriages, then prepared to set off on the third day, disguised as merchants. At this point, there were still 6 days until the deadline of 10, and the journey would take 2. After resting for a day, it would be the Feng Patriarch's birthday celebration. The bearded steward was chatting with Thunderflame in his room when a warrior suddenly came looking for him. Thunderflame had the bearded man attend to his affairs, and the latter left with the warrior. Thunderflame personally met with the bearded man and told him what kind of carriages, horses, and goods he needed before letting him prepare them. Thunderflame was an extremely meticulous man, and in order to avoid suspicion when entering Wind City, he'd done his homework. The bearded steward was in charge of such miscellaneous matters, and he'd finished all of Thunderflame's tasks before nightfall. Thunderflame was quite satisfied with his inspection. At night, the bearded man brought some food to Thunderflame's courtyard. On the night that Yunruoyan had escaped, Thunderflame and Yunruoyan had been competing in spiritual energy. Thunderflame had been by their side, and when Yunruoyan had been sent flying by the powerful spiritual energy, Thunderflame had also been severely injured. During this period of time, he'd stayed in his own courtyard to recuperate, and he'd barely left it. Second young master, why are you out? The bearded man saw Thunderflame sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard in a daze, wearing only a nightgown. He hurriedly walked over and roused Thunderflame from his daze. Thunderflame raised his head in a daze, only to realize that it was already dark outside. Second young master, please follow me into the house. I've had the kitchen prepare your favorite crystal dumplings, the bearded man said, his heart aching for Thunderflame. The bearded man was a veteran of the City Lord's manor, and he'd practically watched Thunderflame grow up. Thunderflame and Thunderflame often left the manor, so Thunderflame was closer to the servants in the manor than to the two of them. The bearded man had even been personally groomed by Thunderflame out of a bunch of servants, so he still treated Thunderflame like a servant. Second young master. The bearded man held the food box in one hand and supported Thunderflame with the other. What happened during your trip to the Dark Lands? Not only did you come back with serious injuries, but you also seem to have changed. In the past, Thunderflame had been a carefree young master, but now, he was often depressed and in a daze, just like before. This worried the bearded man quite a bit. Thunderclap's abnormal behavior didn't attract Thunderclap Flame and Thunderclap Bashan's attention, because both of them were preoccupied with one thing, capturing Yunruoyan. But unexpectedly, the key to Yunruoyan's capture lay in Thunderflame's hands. Chapter 385. Thunderclap clearly didn't want to answer the mustached man's question, so he changed the topic. Why did my brother summon you this afternoon? The warrior who had come to summon the mustached man was Thunderclap Bashan's personal guard, and Thunderclap naturally recognized him. The mustached man told Thunderclap everything that Thunderclap Batian had instructed him to do, and he even used his extraordinary powers of deduction to explain Thunderclap Bashan's next course of action. The carriage that the young city lord had me prepare is specifically for the Wind City's trade route, and he's currently in his manor selecting warriors, so I'm guessing that they're going to disguise themselves as merchants and head to the Wind City. Seeing Thunderclap's interested expression, the mustached man continued, the warriors that the young city lord has selected are all experts, and it seems that they're going to capture someone. How do you know that they're here to capture someone and not do something else? Thunderclap asked. Second young master, I'm sure you don't know. The mustached man smiled. The warriors in the manor are all specialized in different areas. Some are skilled in pursuit, some in ambushes, some in assassination, and some in direct combat. I've been in the manor for so many years that I've learned all of these things. Whenever the city lord mobilizes someone, I know exactly what they're going to do. Some of the warriors are skilled in pursuit, while others are skilled in ambushes, but none of them are skilled in assassination. Combining all of these factors, I can conclude that they're going to capture someone very important, and they're going to capture him alive. Capture. Alive? Thunderclap's heart skipped a beat when he heard the mustached man's words. He immediately guessed who they were going to capture. Other than Yunruoyan and Liemo, there was no one else that the Thunderclap family would place such importance on. The mustached man helped Thunderclap into a chair, and Thunderclap looked up at him. I have something I'd like you to do. What is it? Please instruct me, second young master, the mustached man replied immediately. Help me find out who they're trying to capture, and where they're currently located, Thunderclap instructed. The little mustache man was very resourceful. Before the caravan set off, he had actually managed to investigate the two matters that Thundersun had entrusted him with. This was supposed to be a secret, but Thunderbolt Bashan's personal warrior revealed this secret to Little Mustache when he was drunk. Moreover, he was the only one other than the Thunderbolt clan's father and son and the Ghost Master who knew this secret. The mustache man hurriedly relayed the news to Thunderclap. Thunderclap was silent for a long time after receiving the news. Finally, he said to the mustache man, I still need your help with something. In addition to protecting ourselves, we can also make use of this opportunity to make sure that these people don't return, Shui Feng continued. Only when they're hurt will they know how powerful we are. Count of the Wind made a series of arrangements to deal with the situation on the note. Everyone discussed for half a day, and it wasn't until night fell that they finally came up with a plan to deal with the situation. Shui Feng and Qin Feng followed Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan back to the Yun residence. Count of the Wind had arranged for the two of them to be on guard duty. Because he knew that the residence was under constant surveillance, Count of the Wind didn't send a large number of warriors to prevent alerting the enemy. Lin Qingxue hadn't seen Shui Feng in a long time, but she didn't seem as enthusiastic as she used to be. That night, Zhui Feng and Qin Feng were on guard for the first half of the night. Yun Ruoyan couldn't sleep on her own, so she went to the small courtyard to talk to Liu Mo. The autumn nights were still quite chilly, and even though Yun Ruoyan had just recovered from a serious illness, she was still the center of attention. Liu Mo couldn't help but frown when he saw that she was only wearing a thin nightgown. "I told you to rest in your room, but you didn't listen to me again," he said in a displeased tone. Yun Ruoyan smiled as she walked up to Liu Mo and burrowed into his broad embrace. "I couldn't sleep on my own, so I wanted to come and see you." Liu Mo hugged the petite girl in his arms. No matter how displeased he was, he couldn't express it. At this moment, the sound of coughing could be heard. The two of them turned in the direction of the sound, only to see two silhouettes approaching. It was Qin Feng and Zhui Feng. The one who coughed was Qin Feng. He smiled. "Liu Mo, quickly bring Ruoyan to rest. Her body has just recovered, and she won't be able to withstand the cold." "All right, I'll leave the rest of the night to you," Liu Mo replied, then walked toward the two of them. Chapter 386. As Yun Ruoyan walked past Zhui Feng, she couldn't help but have a strange feeling. This wasn't the first time she had felt this way. Ever since she had woken up from her slumber, she had had this same feeling every time she saw Zhui Feng. However, she couldn't quite put her finger on it. All she knew was that Zhui Feng, whom she had been so familiar with in the past, seemed to give her a sense of alienation and unfamiliarity. As they brushed past each other, Yun Ruoyan tilted her head and glanced at him. His tall, thin profile seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of black mist, and she couldn't see him clearly. That sense of alienation and unfamiliarity deepened in her heart. Yun Ruoyan and Liu Mo walked past a patch of grass. In front of them was the courtyard where they were resting, and in the shadows of the grass, Yun Ruoyan saw a figure standing quietly. "Qingxue," Yun Ruoyan called out to the figure. "Sister Ruoyan," the voice replied. "Why aren't you resting at this hour?" Yun Ruoyan left Li Mo's embrace and walked over to Lin Qingxue's side. When she saw Lin Qingxue's large, watery eyes, as if she had just been crying, her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but think of Zhui Feng. Her sister had always been carefree and cheerful, and Yun Ruoyan couldn't think of a second person who could make her cry other than Zhui Feng. "Why are you crying?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "Did Zhui Feng bully you?" No, he didn't." Lin Qingxue hurriedly denied. "It was the wind." "Sister Ruoyan, I'm going back to rest. You and brother-in-law should get some rest as well." Lin Qingxue didn't give Yun Ruoyan a chance to ask any more questions. She turned around and ran back to her own residence. The next day, Yun Ruoyan paid special attention to Zhui Feng and Lin Qingxue. Not only were the two of them no longer as friendly as before, they didn't even speak to each other or make eye contact. The main reason was that Lin Qingxue was avoiding Zhui Feng. Zhui Feng was still as cold as before. In the past, Lin Qingxue was the one who took the initiative to approach him, but now that she was intentionally avoiding him, the two of them had no interaction at all. She didn't know what had transpired between Lin Qingxue and Zhui Feng during the time she'd been in the dark, but even if Zhui Feng had rejected Lin Qingxue, given Lin Qingxue's personality, she wouldn't have been so petty as to not even speak to Zhui Feng. Yun Ruoyan turned to Lin Qingchen. "Brother Zhuo must have made it clear to Qingxue." Lin Qingchen replied, "That's a good thing. He's never liked you, Qingchen. It's good that you're finally free from the awkwardness of having to shave his head." Zhui Feng, too. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but sigh. "Qingchen's such a good girl, so why doesn't he like her?" "Perhaps he's taken a fancy to someone better," Lin Qingchen suddenly said. Yun Ruoyan turned to Lin Qingchen suspiciously. "Do you know something? Has Zhui Feng taken a fancy to some girl in the Wind City?" "No, I'm just guessing." Lin Qingchen was in the middle of drying the spiritual herbs that Lin Tianming had been using to nourish his body. When she heard Yun Ruoyan's words, she stopped what she was doing and looked at Yun Ruoyan seriously. Sister Ruoyan, I think it's best if you let Qingxue handle this herself. I know her personality, and she'll be fine. Although Yun Ruoyan was worried, she could only nod in agreement. After all, it wasn't like anyone else could interfere in matters of the heart. That night, it was Li Mo's turn to keep watch. When Yun Ruoyan woke up, she found that Li Mo was no longer by her side. Because she had something on her mind, Yun Ruoyan couldn't fall asleep, so she got up as well. She grabbed the blanket that Li Mo had just bought for her and draped it over her shoulders before walking out of the room. She had only taken a few steps when she heard a familiar female voice speaking to her from afar. She frowned as she walked in the direction of the voice. It was still in the shadow of the flowering shrubs from the day before, and there stood a man and a woman. Although she couldn't see their faces, Yun Ruoyan recognized them immediately. One was Lin Qingxue, and the other was Zhuo Feng. Of course, Yun Ruoyan couldn't walk out of her room, but eavesdropping didn't seem appropriate either. Just as she was about to return to her room, she heard Lin Qingxue suddenly cry. Brother Zhuo, you told me before that you wouldn't fall in love with me, and you told me to try not to fall in love with you. I tried, but I couldn't. Lin Qingxue's sobs were suppressed, and although they weren't loud, Yun Ruoyan's heart ached for her. Her anger toward Zhuo Feng was directly proportional to her heartache. Brother Zhuo, you told me to try not to fall in love with you, but why can't you try to fall in love with me? Lin Qingxue cried. If there's anything I've done wrong, just tell me, and I'll change, alright? Qingxue, Zhuo Feng finally spoke up. It's not that you're bad, but that I already have someone I like. Lin Qingxue froze. You already have someone you like? That's impossible. She immediately rejected Zhuo Feng's reasoning. Ever since I've known you, you've never been close to anyone other than me. Even when you were at Kongming Academy, you didn't have any close female friends. Lin Qingxue asked, Brother Zhuo, why would you lie to me like this? Is it because you don't like me? Yun Ruoyan recalled that ever since they'd met Zhuo Feng and his sister, Zhuo Feng had never been close to a woman. In fact, he rarely even spoke to women he wasn't familiar with. Zhuo Feng, you're a fool. Even if you want to lie to Qingxue, you don't have to use such a clumsy lie, do you? Zhuo Feng's expression turned serious as he stared into Lin Qingxue's eyes. Qingxue, I'm not lying to you. I didn't lie to you. I do have someone I like. These past few days, I've sent people to conduct a thorough investigation at the city gates. Fengbo went straight to the point. There's a caravan that's the most suspicious. I've already sent people to monitor them closely. Why not kill them all at once? Qin Feng asked. We can't, Feng Yicheng replied. Feng Yicheng replied, the Feng clan's foreign policy has always been lenient. That's why large numbers of merchant caravans come to trade with us from other cities. If we don't have enough evidence against these caravans, we can't easily touch them. Brother Feng, do you mean that we can only retaliate if they do something unfavorable to us? Liamo asked, his tone dissatisfied. Yun Ruoyan had just been on the brink of death, and he didn't want to put her in any more danger. Brotherly, I understand how you feel. Feng Yicheng hurriedly comforted Liamo, uncle, and I have already reported this matter to the head of the family, and he has personally ordered that as long as these warriors dare to cause trouble in Wind City, they will be completely annihilated. At that time, we'll even be able to capture a few of them alive to testify against the Li family. Even if the Li family decides to turn on us, we'll still be in the right. The Feng family's actions were based on the bigger picture. Although they didn't place Yun Ruoyan's safety as their top priority, no one could find fault with their actions. Alright, let's do as the Fengbo says, Yun Ruoyan replied. Chapter 387. The Count of Foam nodded at Yunruoyan. The day after tomorrow is the family head's birthday, and I'm guessing that they'll make their move on that day. Then, the Count of Foam made a series of arrangements until everyone felt that there were no problems. In the blink of an eye, it was Feng Yinyang's 40th birthday. As the saying went, what goes around comes around. All of the city lords of the 6 continents were present to celebrate, and each of them brought a large number of gifts and warriors. For the entire morning, the streets of the city were filled with carriages from all 6 continents, and both sides of the streets were filled with spectators. As a result, the guards of Wind City had to help maintain order, and the already understaffed Wind City became even more lacking. The head of the Thunderbolt family is here as well. A nobleman poked his head out of his carriage and glanced at the Thunderbolt carriages. Where? Another nobleman also poked his head out of the carriage's window and looked around. I see them. Not only are they here, but they're also here with quite a large entourage. The Thunderbolt family had brought a total of 4 carriages, as well as more than 20 warriors on tall horses surrounding the carriages. Are they here to celebrate or to demonstrate? The nobleman's tone was full of disdain. He was from the Qin family, and the Qin family was more inclined towards the Feng family than the Thunderbolt family. Who cares? Another person said, the 2 clans are fighting, we just need to sit on the sidelines and watch the tigers fight. If the 2 families really start fighting openly, I'm afraid that none of our 5 families will be able to stay out of it, the nobleman sighed. Thunderbolt sat atop the Thunderbolt family's carriage, while Thunderbolt Batian rode beside him. Father. Thunderbolt Batian tilted his head and called out to the carriage. Thunderbolt lifted the curtains and looked at his father. I've already gotten in touch with the Ghost Master. He'll be waiting for us at the inn we're staying at. Thunderbolt nodded and let down the curtains. The carriages of the 6 families were led to different inns by the warriors of the Feng family, while the Thunderbolt family was led to a relatively secluded inn. As soon as Thunderbolt stepped off the carriage and entered his room, a gust of cold wind blew past, and the Ghost Master appeared. Patriarch. Ghost Master bowed to Thunderflame as a sign of respect. Ghost Master, you don't have to be so polite. Thunderflame took off his black robes and handed them to Thunderous Tyrant before sitting on the main seat. How's Yunruoyan's situation? It's still the same. Nothing out of the ordinary. But what I didn't expect is that Yunruoyan and Liemo are highly valued in Wind City. If we can't capture them this time, I'm afraid we won't have another chance in the future. If everything goes as expected, Yunruoyan won't be able to escape our clutches. Liemo wouldn't dare say for sure. Putting Thunderflame's cloak on the chair, Thunderclap Batian said confidently, I've brought more than 20 warriors here before, and we've brought another 20 with us this time. These 50 warriors are all experts with cultivation close to perfection. According to my investigations, there aren't many warriors in Wind City, and their cultivations are only at the 9th rank of Imperial Swordsmen. They're definitely no match for us. If we're exposed, it's not impossible for us to kidnap Yunruoyan openly. Hearing Thunderclap Batian's words, all 3 of them looked as if victory was already in their grasp. Tonight, everyone in the residence has been invited. We can make our move while they're on their way back from the City Lord's Manor, the Ghost Master suggested. Leave Liemo to me, Thunderflame replied. The Ghost Master will be in charge of capturing Yunruoyan, while Tian will lead our warriors to clear a path. The 3 of them agreed on their plan for the night, and they waited patiently for it to arrive. Thunderflame and Thunderclap Batian rested in the inn for a short while, and at noon, a few warriors came to escort them to the City Lord's Manor to participate in the birthday banquet. As soon as they arrived at the manor's entrance, they saw Liemo and Yunruoyan disembarking from a carriage. Thunderflame and Thunderclap Batian saw them, and Yunruoyan and Liemo also saw the Thunderclap father and son duo. When their gazes met, sparks seemed to ignite in the air. City Lord Thunderclap, young Lord Thunderclap, apologies for not welcoming you earlier. This way, please. At this moment, Feng Yicheng walked out of the manor's side door. He first glanced at Li Mo and the others before greeting them with a warm smile. Thunderflame narrowed his eyes and shifted his gaze away from Yun Ruoyan, and Thunderclap Batian snorted coldly before the two of them followed Feng Yicheng into the manor. The manor's entrance was bustling with activity. As soon as the 6 city lords arrived, they were arranged to enter the manor through the side door, but those from the smaller families had to line up in front of the main entrance. According to their previous agreement, Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo wouldn't receive any special treatment, so they also stood in line to enter the manor. Father. Thunderclap Batian turned back to look at Yun Ruoyan and Feng Yicheng. Didn't the Ghost Master say that the Feng family values Yun Ruoyan and Feng Yicheng highly? No matter how much they value them, they're just 2 hamsters from a low-tier continent, Thunderflame replied disdainfully. It's already a show of respect for them to be given a manor. The Feng family's brazen acceptance of these 2 fugitive slaves is a provocation to the Thunderclap family, Thunderclap Batian replied. They might not actually care for them. City Lord, Young Lord Thunderclap Batian and Thunderclap Batian, please enter. Feng Yicheng led the Thunderclap Batian and Thunderclap Batian into the Great Hall, where the other 6 families were already present. When Pai Yen and Pai Batian walked into the hall, the Wu clan's city lord, Lai clan's young city lord, and Shen clan's patriarch stood up to greet the father and son pair. These 3 clans were on good terms with the Pai clan. After the 3 clans exchanged greetings with the Pai clan's father and son pair, the Hua clan and Jing clan stood up from their seats to greet the Pai clan's father and son pair. Not long after everyone took their seats, Feng Yenyang walked into the hall. Feng Yenyang was dressed in a brocade robe and greeted everyone with a smile. When he saw Thunderflame, he welcomed him with all his might. Today is my 40th birthday. Your presence brings light to my humble abode, Feng Yenyang smiled. The auspicious time of my birth is in the evening, so this banquet is the main event. Please feel free to eat at noon, and I won't leave until we're drunk tonight. Even though it was just a casual meal, the Feng clan was still extremely extravagant. Almost all of the guests here had reached the level of fasting, so their requirements for food had surpassed satiety. Their requirements for color, smell, and taste had reached an outrageous level. Yun Ruoyan had lost her appetite ever since she started in India, but when she saw the food prepared by the Feng family, she couldn't help but drool. In the evening, the auspicious time of Feng Yenyang's birthday arrived, and everyone went to the Great Hall to observe. The Feng family was from a low-tier continent, and their etiquette was very similar to that of the Qinyuan continent. By the time the ceremony was over, the sky was completely dark, and the banquet began. Master Feng, you are at the prime of your life at 40. Now that the Feng clan is like the sun in the sky, please take care of us in the future. The Hua clan master, who was on good terms with the Feng clan, stood up from his seat and toasted Feng Yenyang. You flatter me, Patriarch Feng. Feng Yenyang downed the wine in his hand, then smiled. The Feng family has always hoped to cooperate with every family, grow stronger together, and earn spirit crystals together. In terms of earning spirit crystals, the Feng family has earned quite a bit in the past 2 years, the head of the Qin family said. The spirit crystal mines in the darkest lands have produced quite a few high-grade spirit crystals over the past few years, and there are even quite a few sagely spirit crystals. With these spirit crystals, it's enough for a few dozen 9th-rank sword masters to break through to the Great Perfection realm. In less than 3 years, the Feng family will be able to dominate the entire Qinyuan continent. The Qin family had always been a vassal of the Li family, and many of their businesses were also connected to the Li family. Ever since the Li family lost control of the extreme darkness, the profits of the 3 vassal families would be affected. Feng Yenyang only smiled, but didn't say anything. The head of the Jing family said with dissatisfaction, Patriarch Qin, you're wrong. Even if you can dominate the world, you can't always be one family. Today is your family, tomorrow is mine. Yesterday was the Li family, today is the Feng family. Who knows, maybe tomorrow it will be your family's turn, right? Before the Feng family, the Li family had been in charge of the extreme darkness for 9 consecutive years, accumulating vast wealth and power. They dominated the Qinyuan continent for many years. In those years, the Li family was practically the only power on the Qinyuan continent. If not for the sudden rise of the Feng family, the Li family's position would only become more and more stable. By then, no one else would have any say in the matter. Although the Feng family had risen to power, they didn't use too much of an iron fist to suppress or threaten the other families. Compared to the Li family, the Feng family was much more benevolent. Ha! Feng Yannyang laughed, he raised his wine glass and smiled at everyone. Today is my birthday, let's all eat and drink together, let's not talk about these disappointing things. Very well. As soon as Feng Yannyang finished speaking, the head of the Wu family stood up as well. How can there be no entertainment at City Lord Feng's birthday banquet? Today, my family's warriors are willing to offer up some entertainment. That's great, someone else agreed. Without entertainment, the food and wine will be tasteless. The people of the Qinyuan continent worshipped martial arts. The entertainment at the banquet wasn't music or dance, but martial arts competitions. Wine tasting was one of the great pastimes of the Qinyuan continent's nobles. Allow me. At this moment, a loud shout came from behind the Wu clan's patriarch. A man as tall as a mountain stood up from behind the Wu clan's patriarch. He walked to the center of the hall and glanced at the crowd. Then he suddenly pointed at one of the guests and said, "It's him. Come up and have a match with me to liven things up." The crowd followed his finger and saw a black-robed man seated there. This man was none other than Liamo. Chapter 388. This Wu family warrior, who was as tall as a mountain, wasn't a random one. He was the warrior who had fought with Liamo to the very end during the 7th City Martial Tournament and had fallen off the stage together with him. He looked at Liamo with eyes full of battle intent. That day, when he'd competed with Liamo on the tournament stage, they'd been evenly matched, but for some reason, he'd been knocked off the stage by a powerful force. At that time, he was still in a daze when he was judged to have lost. After he went back, the samurai thought about it over and over again. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. This matter was like a stone pressing on his heart. As a result, when he saw Liamo among the guests, he didn't hesitate to issue a challenge. "How is it? You don't dare to come up?" Seeing that Liamo remained seated and had no intention of stepping onto the stage, the warrior made a provocative gesture at him. Many of the guests present had also participated in the martial arts competition. Many of them also had doubts about the result, so when they saw the situation at the moment, they all echoed, "Let's go. Let's continue that broken match." Everyone, young Master Li is a guest of the Feng clan. He has the right to choose not to go on stage. I hope you won't force him. Feng Yicheng stood up and said. Since that is the case, why don't young Master Feng go up the stage and have a match with the Wu clan's warriors? Thunderbolt Batian smiled and said, young Master Feng is the winner of the 7 Cities tournament, so he has the obligation to satisfy everyone's unanimous request. That's right, that battle was at a crucial moment, but somehow the result came out. It was really unpleasant to watch, and it even cost me 300 spirit stones. Someone among the guests began to urge. That's right, let's take this chance to let everyone see the contest clearly. Otherwise, we will all ask the Feng clan to refund the spirit stones, ha ha ha. Someone jokingly said. Feng Yicheng frowned as he looked at the warrior on the stage. His cultivation had already surpassed the consummate level. Feng Yicheng was definitely not a match for him, but the guests present all agreed that if he didn't go on stage today, it would definitely cause dissatisfaction. Just as he was thinking of a solution, he heard a cold male voice, if that's the case, then I will fight you. Liamo stood up from his seat, his gaze still on Yun Ruoyan. In such an occasion, Yun Ruoyan had always kept a low profile and kept her head lowered. At this moment, she raised her head and smiled at Liamo. At the same time, the crowd couldn't help but turn to look at Yun Ruoyan. Two of these gazes belonged to Thunderbolt and Thunderbolt Badian. After this period of recuperation, Yun Ruoyan's face was ruddy and her complexion was excellent. Her crimson robes made her petite figure stand out in the crowd. Because she deliberately kept a low profile, people didn't notice this little girl at first. But at this moment, once people noticed her, it was hard for them to look away. It wasn't until Liamo turned and strode to the center of the hall that he drew everyone's attention. However, there were still a few who were sneaking glances at Yun Ruoyan. Thunderbolt was still a little shocked by Yun Ruoyan's current state. Even though the Silver Dragon Elder had explained to him how powerful the demonic dragon bloodline's regenerative abilities were, he still had some doubts. But now that he was seeing it with his own eyes, he had no choice but to believe it. Apart from Thunderbolt's gaze, there was another person who couldn't take his eyes off Yun Ruoyan. The young master of the Lai family, Senator Lai Sin, had always been surrounded by beautiful women, but this was the first time he had seen a girl as petite and radiant as Yun Ruoyan. He only glanced at Yun Ruoyan once, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. Yun Ruoyan could also feel their gazes on her. Originally, she had only lowered her head slightly, waiting for them to look away on their own, but they didn't seem to notice. Because of their gazes, quite a few people turned their attention back to Yun Ruoyan. Even the duel that was about to begin in the center of the hall didn't seem to pique their interest. Yun Ruoyan couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. She raised her eyes to meet Thunderbolt's malicious gaze. Their gazes met, and Yun Ruoyan didn't back down, just as they had that day at the inn in the darkest reaches of the continent. Yun Ruoyan might be small, but the aura in her eyes wasn't weak at all, and she didn't seem to be at a disadvantage in the slightest. Thunderflame's gaze grew colder and colder, and his lips curled into a disdainful smile. Finally, he shifted his gaze from Yun Ruoyan to the center of the hall, swearing to himself that he would capture this woman tonight. Yun Ruoyan turned to look at the man's burning gaze. Lai Sin was staring at Yun Ruoyan's petite face with infatuation. Abruptly, Yun Ruoyan turned to look at him with the same gaze she'd used on Thunderflame. Her gaze was so sharp that Lai Sin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat, and he couldn't help but lean back. He let out a low cry, and if not for the warrior by his side helping him up, he would have slipped off his chair. Yun Ruoyan hadn't expected such a reaction from her opponent, and she couldn't help but smile. Her smile was like a spring breeze that melted ice, and her eyes, now devoid of murderous intent, were like a pair of bright stars. Lai Sin smiled awkwardly as he adjusted his sitting posture. When he looked at Yun Ruoyan again, she had already returned to her previous silent, bowed posture. At this point, the two combatants on the stage were about to begin their duel. Because the two of them had already fought once before, they were familiar with each other's techniques, so they didn't need to test each other out. The burly man shouted as he circulated the metal-attuned spiritual energy in his spiritual vortex throughout his entire body. Under the influence of the energy, his body instantly turned a golden hue, a phenomenon that could only occur when one's cultivation was at its peak. Liamo could tell that this burly man was a peak-level swordsman, so he unleashed his own cultivation level as well. His ink-black robes fluttered in the wind as his cultivation increased and spiritual energy surged. The two peak swordsmen faced off against each other, and the aura they exuded was astonishing. The warriors on both sides of the VIP stands all stepped forward to protect the heads of the various families, lest they be affected by the shockwaves of the duel. The burly man shouted again, took out a similarly golden broadsword, and swung it at Liamo. The full-force blow of a peak swordsman had the power to split open a mountain, and the wind it generated caused all the cups and bowls on the table to clatter. The golden sword light stung everyone's eyes, but because of their previous experience, everyone endured the blinding light and stared intently at the two combatants in the center of the hall. Just as the golden broadsword was about to strike Liemo, a green sword light suddenly appeared in Liemo's hand. The golden and cyan sword lights collided again. The dazzling light instantly enveloped the entire hall, causing everyone to cover their eyes with their hands. However, this time, the confrontation wasn't as long as the previous one. In just a few breaths, the green sword light in Liemo's hand rapidly expanded, quickly drowning out the burly man's golden sword light. Then, the blinding light gradually dimmed, and the audience impatiently removed their hands to look at the stage. How is that Li guy so powerful this time? He actually gained the upper hand in just a few breaths? Seeing the situation on the stage, the audience was astonished. On the 7-city tournament, Liemo had clearly been in a stalemate with the Wu family warrior for a very long time. The scene of that battle was still vivid in their minds, but this time, Liemo had effortlessly suppressed the Wu family warrior. Could it be that in just a short month, that Liemo has broken through again? Someone asked suspiciously. Impossible. How can it be so easy to break through to the peak swordsman realm? Then what do you think is going on? The last time, they were clearly at roughly the same cultivation level, but this time, that Liemo has gained the upper hand so easily. If it's not a breakthrough, what other reasonable explanation can there be? Someone else raised another question. There's only one explanation, that Liemo hid his strength last time. Someone finally guessed the main point. It was just that no one expected someone to hide their strength in such an important tournament. In their impression, everyone who went on the tournament stage would do their best to win. Liemo's situation was truly unprecedented. You actually hid your strength last time. The moment the Wu family warrior clashed with Liemo, he realized something was amiss. He and Liemo were clearly not on the same level, and he was completely suppressed. Why? He asked. This warrior was indeed very powerful. He was a peak swordsman, while Liemo was a peak swordsman. Liemo was already a peak swordsman, so it was natural that he could suppress him. Could it be that you colluded with the Feng family to help them win? The warrior's face turned red from Liemo's tyrannical spirit energy. He gritted his teeth and said, "The Feng family is indeed treacherous. So you betrayed the Thunder family not because you lost the tournament but because you had a guilty conscience." It wasn't a secret that Liemo had betrayed the Feng family. When the Thunder family captured him, they did so openly. When the Wu family warrior heard about this, he thought that Liemo had lost the tournament and was afraid of being punished. Only now did he realize that Liemo was deliberately tricking the Thunder family. Liemo narrowed his long and narrow eyes, and a murderous intent surfaced in them. He didn't want to kill this warrior at first. A peak swordsman was a rather important existence in a clan. Once Liemo killed him, he would definitely form a feud with the clan. After all, Liemo's group still had to stay on the Qingyuan continent for more than 2 years and shouldn't make too many enemies. However, if this warrior's words were to spread, not only would it affect the Feng family, but it would also affect his future plans. Liemo contemplated for a moment, then finally decided to kill the warrior to silence him. Liemo raised his cultivation to the peak of a second-rank blade master, and a dragon's roar rang out from his sword. In that instant, the sword's green light shone with a blinding white light. Ah! My eyes! The crowd forced their eyes open, but it was as if countless tiny needles had pierced into their pupils. The intense pain caused them to cover their eyes. The Wu warrior's eyes were also blinded by the white light. Just as he closed his eyes, his body was sent flying by the immense spiritual energy. There was a loud bang, followed by the sound of porcelain shattering and the panicked cries of the crowd. When the green light disappeared, the crowd saw that the warrior had fallen unceremoniously on the table in front of Pai Yen and Pai Batian, his chest still impaled by the Thunder family warrior's sword. Chapter 389. Thunderflame's personal guard was standing right next to the Wu family warrior. At this moment, he had a dazed expression on his face, because the Wu family warrior's chest had been pierced by his sword. That Thunderflame warrior killed the Wu family warrior. Feng Yicheng stood up from his seat and pointed at the Thunderflame warrior. The crowd was also stunned. That blinding white light had been so blinding that no one had clearly seen what had just happened. When Feng Yicheng yelled out, everyone looked at each other in confusion. It had clearly been the Wu family's warrior battling Liu Mo. How had the Wu family's warrior suddenly died to the Thunder family's warrior? A great perfection realm expert had died just like that. The Wu clan's clan head's heart ached as though someone had taken a knife and sliced his flesh. He stood up from his seat while trembling and yelled out, "What exactly happened?" "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." Thunderflame's personal guard hurriedly replied. "I only drew my sword to protect my master, but he suddenly crashed into my sword." The warrior turned to his master, Thunderflame, as if pleading for help. Before Thunderflame could say anything, Thunderflame shot to his feet and glanced at Feng Yicheng. "Don't spout nonsense. It was clearly Liu Mo who sent him flying into my family warrior's sword, so Liu Mo was the one who killed him." "That's not right," Feng Yicheng said. "The two of them were competing in spiritual energy, and he was sent flying. Then, your family warrior drew his sword and killed him. How is that unrelated to the Thunderflame family? If anyone were to be held accountable, the two of them should share the blame. Swords and blades have no eyes when it comes to martial arts. I think the Wu family head should just let it go," someone advised. "A sword saint isn't something a regular slave can compare to. How could he just let it go?" The other guests also began to discuss. "My family warrior was eager to protect his master, but he had no intention of harming him, much less killing him." Thunderflame, who had been as steady as Mount Tai all this while, finally spoke up. "If we're talking about the culprit behind the murder, I believe there's someone here with a discerning eye. What do you say, City Lord Feng?" Thunderflame glanced at Feng Yangyang, who said regretfully, "The Thunderflame warriors naturally didn't intend to kill Liu Mo, and neither did Liu Mo. If you ask me, it was an accident." "Feng clan head, if you say that, then I'm not willing. A martial warrior at the great perfection realm of the Wu clan died here just like that. Don't tell me he died in vain." The Wu clan head was obviously not willing to let the matter rest. "Wu clan's clan head, don't be anxious. Let me finish." Feng Yangyang comforted, "Since he died in my Feng clan, and at my birthday banquet, I will not let him die in vain. My Feng clan will pay 20,000 spirit crystals as compensation." "What do you think, Wu clan's patriarch?" The 5 clan heads didn't expect Feng Yangyang to make such an arrangement, and all the words they had in their hearts were stuck in their throats. The 5 clan heads swallowed hard. 20,000 spirit crystals was almost 2 months' worth of income for a clan head. Although a martial perfection realm cultivator was precious, he was still just a cultivator. If they were willing to use spirit crystals to nurture him, 20,000 spirit crystals would be enough to nurture nearly 100 peak 9th rank cultivators. Comparing 100 peak 9th rank cultivators to a martial perfection realm cultivator, the former was obviously more advantageous. Well, 20,000 spirit crystals is a little. The Wu clan's patriarch saw that the Feng clan's clan head was being generous, so he stiffened his neck and said, "It's a little too little. Then how about one more saint-grade spirit crystal?" Feng Yangyang didn't even frown. This time, the Feng clan's patriarch was completely speechless. A clan's collection wouldn't exceed 10 pieces of saint-grade spirit crystal, but Feng Yangyang actually offered 1 piece at a time. Everyone present couldn't believe their eyes. "Deal." The 5 clan heads agreed without hesitation. Since the Feng clan's patriarch is so sincere, it would be foolish of me to pursue the matter any further. In that case, let's continue the banquet. That was just a small interlude, so don't let it affect everyone's mood. Feng Yicheng immediately arranged for the Wu warrior's corpse to be carried away, and Liu Mo returned to his original seat by Yun Ruoyan's side. The banquet began again in a lively and bustling manner. On the Qinyuan continent, in order to liven things up, the nobles often arranged for their slaves to engage in life and death battles. As a result, it wasn't uncommon for one or two of their slaves to die, but this time, it was a martial perfection realm cultivator who had died. The banquet finally came to an end in the middle of the night. The 6 clan heads returned to their respective inns to rest, and the guests of the various minor families bid their farewells and departed. As soon as Thunderflame and Thunderclap Badian entered the carriage, it sped toward the inn where the Thunderclap family was staying. The Ghost Master has already made his move, Thunderclap Badian reported to Thunderflame. Thunderflame nodded. His face was dark, and his entire body was brimming with killing intent. Although the Thunderclap family hadn't suffered any losses at the banquet, Li Mo's forceful actions had angered him. Tell the Ghost Master and the other warriors that, other than Yun Ruoyan, as long as she's still breathing, don't hold back. As for Liu Mo, I'll deal with him myself. Yes, Father, Thunderflame replied. Thunderbolt Badian replied, Father, someone is following the carriage. Thunderbolt Badian opened the curtain and looked outside. Then, he turned his head and said, Father, someone is following the carriage. Thunderflame opened his eyes. Clearly, he had also sensed the aura behind the carriage. Not only was the aura strong, but it also felt familiar. It's him. Thunderflame clenched his fists. The black-robed man who had fought with him twice, but had retreated so quickly each time appeared in front of him. Father, do you know who's following us? Thunderflame asked. It's the black-robed man who's always spoiling our plans, Thunderflame replied. And he's here again. The horse carriage soon arrived at the courier station. The father and son of the Thunderflame family entered the courier station and quickly changed into black clothes. Thunderflame said to Pai Badian, that black-robed man is just outside. I'll go and meet him. Li Mo's cultivation level should be about the same as yours. After the father and son agreed, they flew out of the window from the front and back. Fingbua stood in front of Thunderflame and blocked his path. Who are you, exactly? Thunderflame stared at the black-robed Fingbua. Why do you keep spoiling my plans? Ha! Count of the Wind sneered and replied in a hoarse voice, City Lord Thunderbolt, if your plan succeeds, my plan will be ruined. Since that's the case, it seems I'll have to deal with you first to complete my mission, Thunderflame said coldly. That's right, Fingbua agreed. As soon as he finished speaking, Thunderflame attacked. There was no need to test the waters in a fight between experts. Thunderflame instantly raised his cultivation to that of a great perfection cultivator. His fists instantly turned an earthen yellow. He was using an earth elemental external technique. The earth element and the metal element were both external techniques that relied on the combination of the physical body to engage in close-range combat. Once hit, even those with a higher cultivation base would be severely injured. Therefore, when faced with these two techniques, unless the opponent's cultivation base was at least 2 levels higher than the opponent's, it was best not to take the attack head-on. Fingbua naturally wouldn't take Thunderflame's attack head-on. As he retreated, he released vines to obstruct Thunderflame's attack. Layers upon layers of vines formed a wall in front of Fingbua. Thunderflame's fist smashed into the wall of vines, sending leaves and branches flying in all directions. Fingbua was a little shocked. Thunderflame's fist was already stronger than a 3rd-level Great Perfection Blade Master. The last time he'd fought Thunderflame, he'd only been an early-stage 3rd-level Blade Master. In just a month, he'd taken a huge step forward, and his spiritual energy cultivation was already showing signs of breaking through to 4th level. Just as Fingbua was feeling a little apprehensive, Thunderflame's earth elemental fist burst into flames. Not only is he improving rapidly, but he also cultivates both earth and fire. Fengbo was shocked once more. Thunderflame's spiritual flames quickly set Fengbo's vines ablaze, and the raging flames spread through the air towards Fengbo. With a wave of his hand, Fengbo gave up on his wall of vines and retreated. When he looked for Thunderflame again through the flames, he found that he'd already disappeared. Thunderflame had taken advantage of this small window of opportunity to escape. How sly! Fengbo growled, then flew toward the direction of Yun Ruoyan's villa. Just as Yun Ruoyan's carriage was about to reach the villa, a group of warriors suddenly appeared and surrounded it. Who are you? The leader of the group of warriors sent by the Fongs to escort Yun Ruoyan and Liemo stepped forward and blocked the carriage. We're here to kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, the leader leaped into the air and slashed at the roof of the carriage with a cold, glinting sword. The roof of the carriage was instantly sliced apart by the sharp sword chi, sending splinters flying everywhere. A black-robed man leaped out of the carriage, standing on a sword of green light as he faced off against the leader of the black-robed men. Thunderflame, there's no need to hide. Show your face. Liemo called out to Thunderflame, who was also standing on a sword of green light. However, Thunderflame's gaze was focused on the carriage. He could see a crimson figure nestled in the corner of the carriage. Without a word, he bent down and grabbed at that figure. Humph. Liemo snorted. So you're here for Yen, After that, he took out his green light sword and stabbed towards the direction of Liemo's claw. Liemo and Liemo's cultivation were similar. Therefore, Liemo didn't dare to take Liemo's sword head-on. He had to retreat. Not only will you not be able to bring her away, but you won't be able to leave either. Liemo raised his sword and stabbed at Thunderflame. Yun Ruoyan is in the carriage. You must capture her. Thunderbolt Batian shouted to the 20 warriors he had brought with him as he fought with Liemo in midair. Chapter 390. Below, the warriors of the Thunderclap clan and the Foam clan were also fighting. These warriors were all between the 8th and 9th level, and they were using all kinds of techniques to fight. It was not an ordinary fight. The warriors that Pai Batian had brought were all skilled fighters, and although the Foam warriors weren't too shabby, they were still a little weaker. In less than 5 minutes, half of the Leaf family's warriors were dead, and the Pai warriors were getting closer and closer to the carriage. As Liemo looked at the situation below, his face revealed an anxious expression. With a single slash of his sword, he forced Thunderbolt Batian back a little, then hurriedly descended to the ground to protect Yun Ruoyan. Pai Batian also landed on the ground. As soon as he touched the ground, he executed a technique that instantly killed 5 of the Foam warriors. The Foam warriors, who were already relatively weak, were now even weaker. Finish this quickly. Pai Batian ordered. The Pai warriors increased the intensity of their attacks, forcing the Foam warriors closer and closer to the carriage. Liemo wielded his azure sword, guarding the crimson figure in the carriage closely, preventing the Pai warriors from taking a single step forward. After Thunderbolt Batian killed 3 more Foam clan warriors, he took out a whip with a flip of his hand. The scarlet whip cut through the air and lashed at the carriage. The carriage, which was already on the verge of collapse, was completely smashed by the whip. The crimson figure lay prone on the bottom of the carriage, motionlessly protecting the vital parts of her body from the shock waves of the battle around her. When Yun Ruoyan's entire body was revealed, Thunderclap Badian couldn't help but grow a little anxious. Judging from Li Mo's anxiety for Yun Ruoyan, he knew that as long as he could capture her and use her as a hostage, Li Mo would be dead for sure. Trap Li Mo for me. Pai Badian issued another command. Of the remaining dozen or so Pai warriors, only 3 were left to deal with the remaining 5 Feng warriors, while the rest attacked Li Mo simultaneously. Fireballs, icicles, rattan vines, and rocks flew at Li Mo. Although these techniques weren't enough to hurt him, the overlapping attacks of more than 10 techniques caught him off guard. Furthermore, he had to prevent the attacks from damaging the carriage behind him, so he only had time to react. At this moment, however, Thunderbolt Bashan's hands were free. Spiritual energy surged beneath his feet, and he leapt high into the air, leaping past Li Mo and grabbing at the red figure in the carriage behind him. Yun Ruoyan, let's see where you can run this time. Thunderbolt Badian hooted, a smug smile on his face as he grabbed Yun Ruoyan's arm. He didn't have any tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. He used quite a bit of strength in this blow, which was enough to shatter an ordinary person's bones. However, the person in his hand did not cry out in pain at all. Instead, what made Thunderbolt Badian feel strange was that the arm in his hand was strangely sturdy. Just as this strange feeling surfaced in Pai Bashan's heart, a familiar yet vague male voice rang in his ears. Long time no see, Pai Badian. As this voice rang out, a yellow sword aura flashed by his side, and Pai Badian felt an intense, bone-piercing pain in Yun Ruoyan's left arm. Arg! Pai Bashan's cry of pain reverberated through the air, and the bone-piercing pain continued. That yellow sword aura slashed at Pai Bashan's body once more. Enduring the pain, Pai Badian didn't even have time to see what was happening. A sword aura rose from beneath his feet, and he flew up into the air. When he looked down from midair, he saw a person dressed in a dark robe standing at the bottom of the carriage. However, it wasn't Yun Ruoyan, but a burly man. Qin Feng stood tall on the carriage like a pine tree. He tore off his pink robe, revealing a warrior's outfit underneath. He held his gigantic saber in one hand, and with the other, he pulled off Pai Bashan's other arm. He shouted to the sky, Pai Badian, today, I'll avenge the students and instructors of the Beastmaster Hall. Then, he brandished his gigantic saber and chopped Pai Bashan's arm into pieces. Pai Badian felt that the bone-piercing pain in his left arm had turned into a bone-piercing pain in his brain. The extreme pain drove Pai Badian into a frenzy. His sensible choice was to flee, but his madness caused him to lash out at Qin Feng with the scarlet whip in his hand. By this time, Li Mo had already dealt with the dozen or so Feng warriors. When he saw that Pai Badian was attacking Qin Feng in a frenzy, he immediately leaped onto the carriage and stood in front of Qin Feng. The scarlet whip wrapped itself around Li Mo's green light sword. The two of them stared at each other, separated by the sword and the whip. You've lost. Li Mo exclaimed. That might not be the case. Pai Badian replied coldly. Don't think that you can fool everyone with your little tricks. The Ghost Master has already brought more than 20 warriors to capture Yun Ruoyan. That black-robed man is being held back by my father, and you're still here. I'm afraid that Yun Ruoyan has already fallen into the hands of the Ghost Master. Li Mo's gaze turned cold. It looks like I'll have to finish you off as soon as possible. Li Mo had set up a trap for Yun Ruoyan to hide while Qin Feng disguised himself as her to lure Pai Badian and the others out. However, while the Ghost Master was monitoring Yun Ruoyan's group, he had discovered that they frequently visited Feng Yicheng's residence. Although he had no way of knowing what Yun Ruoyan's group was planning, his many years of experience in the art of deception could tell that something fishy was afoot. Although he wasn't sure, he still suggested a backup plan, and Pai Batian agreed. He had Pai Yen and Pai Batian follow Li Mo's group, and if nothing went wrong, they would be able to capture Yun Ruoyan. As for the Ghost Master, he led another group of warriors to lie in ambush around Feng Yicheng's residence, just in case. The Ghost Master didn't lie in ambush for long before he saw Yun Ruoyan being escorted into the courtyard by Feng Yicheng's group. Once Yun Ruoyan's group entered the courtyard, the Ghost Master leaped over the walls and easily killed all of Feng Yicheng's guards. At that moment, Yun Ruoyan, Feng Yicheng, and Zhui Feng were waiting for Li Mo's return in the main hall. Don't worry. Feng Yicheng saw that Yun Ruoyan was sitting stiffly on the chair, evidently worried and nervous. He comforted her, "Leave it to my uncle to deal with Thunderflame. As for Pai Batian, he's too anxious to see through your plan." Yun Ruoyan nodded slightly. This plan was one that she and Li Mo had come up with after much thought, and it had received everyone's support. In truth, she had desperately wanted to stay in the carriage and face danger with Li Mo. However, logic told her that, given her current strength, she would only be a burden. The further away she was from Li Mo, the safer he would be. And Li Mo's greatest wish was to keep Yun Ruoyan out of danger with him. Zhui Feng, who was leaning against the door frame, suddenly turned to Yun Ruoyan and Feng Yicheng and gestured for them to keep quiet. "What's the matter?" Qin Feng asked in a low voice. "Someone's come in, and more than one." Zhui Feng quickly rushed to Yun Ruoyan's side. "Do you have a place to hide? Hurry and hide, Ruoyan. Stop hiding, none of you will be able to escape." A hoarse and unpleasant voice suddenly came from outside the door. Along with the voice, a gust of cold wind blew in from outside the door. The cold wind carried a wisp of black energy, and it slowly coalesced into a black figure not far from Yun Ruoyan. "The Ghost Master." Yun Ruoyan called out. "Mute girl, why aren't you calling me master anymore?" "Ha!" The Ghost Master cackled. Feng Yicheng and Zhui Feng both stood in front of Yun Ruoyan. At the Ghost Master's command, a dozen or so cultivators leapt in from outside, and another 10 or so formed a second line of defense in the courtyard. Other than Yun Ruoyan, kill the other two. At the Ghost Master's command, the dozen or so cultivators in the room charged at Zhui Feng and Feng Yicheng. "Ah!" A blood-curdling scream came out of the Ghost Master's mouth. He took a few steps back, and his ghostly hand was smoking. When the Ghost Master used his ghost hand to grab her, she quickly took out the Scarlet Eye Spirit Sword and used it to block the Ghost Master's hand. The Ghost Master managed to grab the Scarlet Eye Spirit Sword. The scorching heat of the Scarlet Eye had severely injured the Ghost Master's ghostly hand in an instant. "The Scarlet Eye is the bane of ghosts like you. I'm afraid it won't be so easy for you to catch me." Yun Ruoyan held the Scarlet Eye Sword horizontally in front of her, not showing the slightest hint of fear in the face of the Ghost Master. The Ghost Master had witnessed Yun Ruoyan's prowess firsthand. Not to mention her cultivation, just her bravery and bravery alone had allowed her to face off against Yun Ruoyan, who was several realms higher than her. She had even managed to escape from Yun Ruoyan's clutches, and she was still standing in front of him, unscathed. She had even called for such a large group of cultivators to capture her. When the Ghost Master thought of this, he gave up on the idea of personally dealing with Yun Ruoyan. Instead, he took out a small black bottle from his robes and pulled out the cork. A black gas floated out of the bottle and slowly coalesced into a humanoid figure in front of Yun Ruoyan. This was none other than the ghostly figure that Yun Ruoyan had sent to deal with the Ghost Master that day in the darkest of inns. Yun Ruoyan looked at the ghostly figure hovering 3 inches above the ground, her brows furrowed tightly. Ever since she had been rescued by Li Mo, the ghostly figure hadn't appeared, and she had guessed that it had been captured by the ghost master. Although Yun Ruoyan wasn't surprised to see the ghostly figure, her heart sank. Chapter 391. Yun Ruoyan gently turned the ghost ring on her finger, but the ghost didn't react in the slightest. The ghost ring was specifically designed to control ghosts, but now that it was useless, Yun Ruoyan's heart sank even more. I've already refined this ghostly puppet, and I'm its new master. The ghost master's raspy voice was filled with pride. Then, his voice turned cold as he ordered, "Go, capture that Yun Ruoyan." As soon as the phantom heard her command, it raised the ghostly blade in its hand and slashed at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan used her scarlet eye to block the attack, but the ghostly blade was no match for the scorching heat of the scarlet iron dissipated. However, the force of the blow caused Yun Ruoyan to stumble back a few steps and slam into a wall. After being nourished by Yun Ruoyan's black spiritual energy, the phantoms had been able to materialize into their current physical form, and their fighting prowess had greatly increased. In particular, the ghostly blade in its hand, although it wasn't a match for Qi Tong, it was still incredibly powerful. Based on Yun Ruoyan's current strength, she wouldn't be a match for it. If not for Qi Tong, Yun Ruoyan would have had to endure that blow. The ghost master seemed to have noticed this as well, and he ordered the ghost, "Continue attacking until she can't hold her sword." The ghost clenched its fists in the air, and a ghostly blade appeared in its hands. It raised the blade and slashed at Yun Ruoyan once more. Each time, the blade was dissipated by Qi Tong, but under the ghost master's urging, the ghost would quickly condense a new blade and slash at Yun Ruoyan. After this happened 5 times, Yun Ruoyan felt her hands go numb. With a clang, Yun Ruoyan finally couldn't hold on to Qi Tong any longer, and it fell to the ground. The ghostly blade didn't stop in the slightest, heading straight for Yun Ruoyan's head. "Stop!" The ghost master shouted in time, and the blade stopped just inches from Yun Ruoyan's head. "Miss Yun, you'd better behave." Seeing Yun Ruoyan's gaze on Qi Tong, the ghost master turned to the ghost. "Knock her out." The ghost raised its hand and struck at the back of Yun Ruoyan's neck. As soon as she opened her mouth, she felt a sharp pain in the back of her head and fainted. Qi Tong turned into a streak of light and entered Yun Ruoyan's body. "Stop!" The ghost master used his ghostly hands to lift the unconscious Yun Ruoyan up, while the ghost demon placed a ghostly blade against Yun Ruoyan's neck. Zhuo Yifeng and Feng Yicheng, who were fighting with the warriors, immediately stopped fighting. "If you dare touch a single hair on her head, I'll definitely grind your bones to dust," Zhuo Yifeng said coldly to the ghost master. "Humph, shameless boasting," the ghost master also said coldly. His eyes suddenly shone with greed as he looked at Zhuo Yifeng and Feng Yicheng. He said coldly, "I should have killed the 2 of you without mercy, but the 2 of you are perfect ingredients for refining ghost ho. I will spare your lives for now." Afterwards, he ordered his warriors to tie up the 2 of them and bring them out of Feng Yicheng's mansion, heading towards the place he had agreed to meet with the Thunderbolt father and son. One of Thunderbolt's arms had been severed, and he was gradually losing ground under the combined attacks of Li Mo and Qin Feng. Just as the 2 of them were about to kill each other, Thunderbolt suddenly arrived. Tian, In midair, Thunderflame could see Pai Baishan's bloodied body being pincered by Li Mo and Qin Feng's attacks. With a heart-wrenching cry, he sped toward Li Mo and Qin Feng. "Qin Feng," Li Mo said to Qin Feng, "I'll leave Thunderbolt Badian to you." With that, he activated his spiritual sword and charged at Thunderbolt Flame. "How dare you hurt my Tian, I'll kill all of you." Thunderbolt's voice was filled with rage. His earth and yellow fists were enveloped in a layer of spiritual fire as he punched at Li Mo. Li Mo took out his azure sword and thrust it at Thunderflame's fist. Although Li Mo's sword wasn't an ordinary weapon, Thunderflame's cultivation was much higher than his, and Thunderflame's fist was able to withstand Limo's sword. Eat another punch. Thunderbolt's other fist came at Limo, who had no choice but to retreat. Limo steadied himself and turned back to look at Qin Feng and Sui Baitian's situation. Sui Baitian was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Therefore, he was fighting with all his might. He was fighting with Qin Feng in a suicidal manner. Therefore, Qin Feng wasn't able to kill him in a short time. In his panic, Thunderflame tried to circle around Limo, but Limo's speed didn't slow down at all. He didn't have the slightest chance. You're courting death. Limo roared. Thunderbolt. You're the one courting death this time, aren't you? Limo looked behind Thunderbolt. Thunderflame also sensed a powerful aura behind him. Turning around, he saw Count of Wind hovering 30 feet behind him on his flying sword. City Lord Thunderbolt, you run pretty fast, Count of Wind whispered. But I'm not slow either. Ha! Thunderflame glanced at Sui Baitian, who was locked in a death match with Qin Feng, then at Fengbua and Limo, who had formed a pincer attack on him. He laughed bitterly. Are we really going to lose our lives here? I, Thunderbolt the First, have miscalculated time and time again. In the end, I can't even protect my own son. Those who are too ambitious and ruthless usually don't have a good ending, Count of Wind said. Who are you? Can you let me die knowing? Thunderflame asked Count of Wind, who was hidden in the black robes. Who are you? Thunderbolt and Wind City had always been at odds with each other. In recent years, with the rise of Wind City, the two had become even more hostile. Although killing Thunderbolt wasn't part of the Feng family's plan, it was a gift from the heavens. Count of Wind was naturally more than happy to oblige. Who I am isn't important. What's important is that today, I'll use all my strength to take your life. Count of Wind was an extremely cautious man. Even if he decided to kill Thunderbolt, he wasn't willing to reveal his identity as a member of the Feng family. Since that's the case, let's use our best moves. Thunderflame took out a large blade and pointed it towards the sky. A yellow and red spiritual energy fused into one and soared into the sky from Thunderflame's blade. In a split second, dark clouds covered the sky, and crackling sounds of thunder could be heard in the sky. Not good, he's going to use a lightning attracting technique. Count of Wind shouted. As he did so, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Thunderbolt pointed his broadsword in Limo's direction. With a deafening crack, the bolt of lightning struck Limo's back. Limo turned around and saw that Qin Feng was fighting Pai Baitian with obelisk in hand. Caught off guard, he was struck by a bolt of lightning from the sky, and his entire body was charred black as he fell from the sky. Qin Feng. Limo called out as he chased after Qin Feng, catching his falling body in his arms. Qin Feng was still conscious. With great difficulty, he said, "You must kill Thunderbolt Baitian for me. Avenge the students and instructors of my Imperial Beast Hall." "All right, I'll definitely kill him," Limo replied. When Qin Feng heard this, a faint smile appeared on his charred face. His eyes slowly closed, but it wasn't clear whether he was dead or unconscious. Limo couldn't be bothered with him. He placed him on the ground, then looked in Thunderbolt's direction. However, another bolt of lightning struck Limo. In order to protect Qin Feng, Limo held his sword in front of him and took the brunt of the lightning. The lightning was indeed powerful, and Limo's entire body went numb. Kacha, kacha. Following that, more bolts of lightning fell from the sky. Limo and Count of Wind were so busy dealing with the lightning that they didn't have the time to care about the heavily injured Thunderbolt. When the first round of lightning ended, Limo discovered that Thunderbolt had disappeared. He didn't even know when he'd escaped. Limo, on the other hand, could barely hold on after 2 or 3 bolts of lightning. Count of Wind rushed in front of Liamo on his sword. After Pai Badian escaped, Pai Yen no longer had anything to worry about and began to focus on dealing with Count of Wind and Liamo. Count of Wind stood in front of Liamo and a few bolts of lightning struck Count of Wind at almost the same time, but Count of Wind managed to withstand them all. His level of cultivation surprised both Pai Badian and Liamo Crack. A huge bolt of lightning struck Feng Bo's body once again. His black robe was torn apart by the huge lightning bolt, revealing Feng Bo's true appearance. Count of Wind from the Feng clan, it's you. Thunderbolt recognized Count of Wind at a glance. Count of Wind often accompanied Feng Yenyang to various events between the 7 cities, so there were many who could recognize him. In addition, Count of Wind had defeated Thunderbolt in the previous tournament, so Thunderbolt had a deep impression of him. It really is someone from the Feng family, Thunderbolt gritted his teeth. We'll pay you back for what we've suffered today. Then, he flew off on his sword. Count of Wind was just about to chase after him when Liamo called out from behind, Count of Wind, hurry to Feng Yicheng's manor. Ruoyan might be in danger. Liamo had withstood 3 or 4 bolts of lightning. Although he wasn't seriously injured, his spiritual energy had been temporarily impeded. He didn't have time to recover before he leaped onto Count of Wind's sword and sped toward Feng Yicheng's manor. Not long after the two of them flew off, a streak of sword light shot toward them. It was none other than Feng Yicheng. Brotherly, uncle. Feng Yicheng called out anxiously. Hurry up and save Zhui Feng and Miss Yun. What happened to them? Count of Wind asked. Thunderbolt's subordinate, a ghostly master, broke into my manor and captured the 2 of them. I was captured as well, but Zhui Feng killed a few of the warriors around me and helped me escape, Feng Yicheng explained. How are they? Liamo asked anxiously. Miss Yun has been knocked unconscious, and Zhui Feng is seriously injured, Feng Yicheng replied. Which direction did they go? Take us there, Count of Wind said. With Feng Yicheng leading the way, the 3 of them chased after the ghostly master's group. Chapter 392. Under Feng Yicheng's lead, Liamo and Count of Feng chased after the ghost master. I wasn't in a hurry to leave after escaping, Feng Yicheng said to the 2 men beside him. Up ahead, Feng Yicheng flew on his sword as he said to the 2 people beside him, I saw Ghost Master take Lady Yun and another warrior to escort Zhui Feng to the east. The other warriors didn't go with him and left in another direction. The more people there are, the bigger the target. They're trying to split into 2 groups, Feng Yicheng explained. It's nighttime now, and the city gates aren't open at night, so the Ghost Master and his men can only leave through the air. If too many people leave the city at once, they'll definitely attract attention, so the Pai family's warriors won't leave tonight. They'll cover for the Pai father and son, as well as the Ghost Master, so that they can leave Wind City first. Count of Feng, Brother Feng, look. As soon as Count of Feng finished speaking, Liamo saw a huge fire rising from the southern side of Wind City. The Pai family must have deliberately set this fire to attract attention, Feng Yicheng said. The 3 of them paused in midair, and Count of Feng turned to Feng Yicheng. Yicheng, return to the city to help. Make sure to capture every single one of the Pai family's warriors. Liamo and I will chase after the Pai father and son. Feng Yicheng was only a 9th-rank swordsman, so he wouldn't be of much help even if he followed. Upon receiving Count of Feng's orders, he turned and flew toward the area where Wind City was on fire. Count of Feng, where will the Pai father and son leave Wind City? Liamo asked as he stood behind Count of Feng. Although Wind City's defenses weren't as exaggerated as those of Pai City, Liamo could tell that Wind City's defenses were lax on the outside but tight on the inside. Apart from the 4 city gates, we've set up at least 10 hidden sentries along the city walls, Count of Feng explained. As long as an unknown person leaves the city at night, they won't be able to escape the eyes of these sentries. As soon as they're discovered, a signal flare will be sent out. As soon as Count of Feng finished speaking, another purple signal flare flew into the sky from the eastern city wall. There's a signal flare there. Liemo pointed ahead. They left from there. Let's chase after them. The sword light under Feng Bo's feet instantly turned into a stream of light and chased after the signal flare. When they arrived, the 2 of them saw that the sentries set up by the city wall had already been destroyed, and the 3 warriors were all heavily injured and lying on the ground. Where are they? Count of Wind asked one of the warriors who was still conscious. That warrior pointed outside the city wall with difficulty and said, "We couldn't stop them. They all flew out of the city." The 2 of them continued out of the city in pursuit, and this pursuit lasted for an entire day and night. Only when they reached the gates of Thunderbolt City did they finally see the Thunderbolt father and son, as well as the Ghost Master, Yunruoyan, and the others. However, they were still more than a kilometer away. Shuaifeng was escorted into Thunderclap City by the Thunderclap father and son, as well as the Ghost Master and another warrior. Count of Wind rode his sword and stopped outside Thunderclap City. In the end, I still didn't catch up. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure flashed by his side. It was Liemo, who was riding his own sword of azure light toward Thunderclap City. No! Count of Wind hurriedly shouted as he chased after Liemo. "Liemo, stop right there." Count of Wind was much faster than Liemo, and he quickly caught up to Liemo and blocked his path. "Get out of my way, I'm going to save Yen." Because of his anxiety, Liemo's eyes were slightly red. Just now, he had clearly seen Yunruoyan being carried on the Ghost Master's shoulders. That silent movement made Liemo feel as if a knife was stabbing into his heart. If we'd caught up to them outside Thunderclap City, we'd naturally have to do our best to save them, because that way, there'd still be a chance that they'd be rescued. But if we tried to rescue them now, not only would we not have any hope of getting them out, we might even lose our lives. Count of Wind tried to stop him. Count of Wind. Liemo frowned. Can't you and I save 1 or 2 people from the Thunderclap family given our strength? Count of Wind was the strongest person Liemo had ever seen on the Dark Abyss continent. Although Count of Wind wasn't the strongest, his cultivation was still top-notch. The 2 of them working together could easily be imagined, which was why Liemo had asked such a question. You might not know this, but the Thunderclap family hides a frightening power, one that the 2 of us can't fight against. Count of Wind sighed, a look of awe on his face. What frightening power? Liemo asked. As for what exactly it is, no one outside of the Thunderclap family knows, Count of Wind replied. Count of Wind replied, I only know that this power comes from the extreme Abyss continent. Do you remember when you were sealed in the ocean when you first arrived here? Of course I do, Liemo replied. Anyone who had experienced that would likely never forget that scene for the rest of their lives. The seal is actually a mirror called the sky-flipping mirror, Yi Futian said. The sky-turning mirror. Liemo recalled what had happened that day, and the image of a mirror that was suspended in midair and radiating light appeared in his mind. That day, everyone had faced a crisis they had never encountered before, so most of their attention had been focused on the 7 great families. Even if they had noticed the mirror that had trapped them, they hadn't paid much attention to it. But now, the image of that mirror had appeared clearly in Liemo's mind. Does the sky-turning mirror have any other kind of power other than a restriction? Liemo asked. Not only can the sky-turning mirror set up a restriction, it can also communicate with the upper continents, Count of Wind said. This means that the Thunderclap family has long since latched onto the upper continent's thighs. This is one of the main reasons why the Thunderclap family dares to act as they please on the Nether Abyss continent, As for the upper continents and the upper continents, Liemo knew much more about them than most people. The upper continents were what the intermediate continents and the lower continents called the powerful cultivators of the upper continents. Liemo wasn't surprised that the sky-turning mirror could communicate with the upper continents. Back on the Qinyuan continent, the first elder had communicated with the upper continents through the all-seeing mirror. The upper continents had allowed them to travel from the lower Qinyuan continent to the intermediate continent, and the number of cultivators they had brought was also in accordance with the upper continent's wishes. Through Empress Snow Eye, Liemo learned that the upper continents were the elders of the Silver Dragon clan. There were 7 elders in the Silver Dragon clan, and they formed a council of elders that was in charge of all matters pertaining to the clan. However, due to a 1,000-year rule, they couldn't directly interfere with the affairs of the intermediate continents and the lower continents. Even the first elder didn't dare to break this rule. Only when there was a special situation would the council of elders come up with a plan to communicate to the intermediate and lower continents. Liemo's group, as well as many cultivators from the lower continents, had come to the Qinyuan continent as a result of this intervention. As for why they were required to send people here every 3 years, Liemo couldn't think of a reason. As far as I know, the upper continents aren't allowed to interact with the people of the intermediate and lower continents alone, much less provide them with help. You know this too. The first elder was rather surprised that Liemo knew this. I learned it from my master, Liemo replied. My master is the person with the highest status on the continent, and he can communicate with the upper continents through the all-seeing mirror. No wonder. The first elder nodded. 20 years ago, the 7 cities also had a mirror that allowed them to communicate with the upper continents, but it suddenly broke for no apparent reason. Since then, the 7 cities have lost contact with the upper continents. Not long after, the Thunder Clan brought out the sky-flipping mirror. Everyone has seen the power of the sky-flipping mirror. This is one of the reasons why many small clans are afraid of the Thunder Clan. Fortunately, the Thunder Clan doesn't dare to use the mirror to do whatever they want. However, it is absolutely impossible to force your way into the Thunder Clan. If you anger that person, I'm afraid that you, and even Wind City will suffer. Liemo had no choice but to give up on the idea of charging into Thunderbolt City immediately. Now that Thunderbolt has seen my face, there's no way he'll let the Feng family off the hook. He's been looking for an opportunity to confront the Thunderbolt family, and now that they've found a chance, I'm afraid Thunderbolt will start his revenge very soon. I have to return to Wind City to inform the city lord and help him defend the city. Then I'll stay behind and sneak into the city to find a chance to save them, Liemo said. That's all we can do for now, Thunderbolt said worriedly. Don't be rash. Thank you for the reminder. I know what to do, Liemo replied. Thunderbolt returned to Wind City on his sword, while Liemo landed outside the city and searched for an opportunity to enter Thunderbolt City. Tian, how are you? Thunderbolt asked anxiously as soon as he entered Thunderbolt City. Because there were pursuers behind them, he had been carrying Thunderbolt Batian along the way and didn't have the chance to treat Thunderbolt Batian's arm. Although Thunderbolt Batian had performed a simple hemostasis treatment and had taken some medicine to stop the bleeding, his face was still devoid of color due to excessive blood loss. Father, before he could finish his sentence, Thunderbolt's vision darkened and he fainted. Thunderbolt had been holding on with his last breath, but this time, he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. Tian. Even Thunderbolt, as the head of the Thunderbolt family, panicked at the sight of his son, who was on the brink of death. Patriarch. The Ghost Master reminded him. Hurry and bring the young lord to see the Silver Dragon Elder. He'll definitely be able to save the young lord. Thunderflame reacted and immediately carried Thunderclap Batian towards the City Lord Mansion. Chapter 393. As soon as they entered the manor, Thunderflame carried Sway Batian directly into a dark room in his bedroom. The ghost master carried Yun Ruoyan and followed behind him, while Zhui Feng was brought to a room where the warrior locked him up. Thunderflame placed Pai Batian on the ground in front of the sky-flipping mirror. Then, he walked up to the mirror and bit his finger, dripping a drop of blood onto its surface. Under normal circumstances, Thunderflame and the Silver Dragon Elder would arrange a time and place for their next meeting through the sky-turning mirror, or the Silver Dragon Elder would summon them. If Thunderflame wanted to see the Elder, he would have to use his blood essence to activate the sky-turning mirror, and only then would he be able to contact the Elder. The drop of essence blood that had dripped from the middle finger landed on the surface of the sky-turning mirror and was quickly absorbed by it. An image gradually appeared on the pitch-black surface of the mirror. The Silver Dragon Grand Elder appeared on the surface of the mirror. Thunderflame, why have you summoned me at this time? The Elder seemed displeased to be interrupted in the middle of something. Have you captured Yun Ruoyan? Before Thunderflame could finish his sentence, he fell to his knees and sobbed to the Silver Dragon Elder, Yun Ruoyan has been captured. However, my son, Pai Batian, was severely injured during the capture. I beg the Elder to save my son's life. The Ghost Master placed Yun Ruoyan on the ground from his shoulder for the Elder to see. The Elder's snow-white face suddenly appeared on the surface of the mirror, and as soon as he saw Yun Ruoyan's face clearly, a ray of white light shot out from the mirror and landed on Yun Ruoyan's body. Yes, that's right. The Elder finally smiled in satisfaction. She's indeed the heir of the Silver Dragon bloodline. The demonic dragon blood in her body is even thicker than her father's. Thunderflame, Ghost Master, you've done well this time. Elder, look at my son. Thunderflame prostrated on the ground, his voice trembling from his anxiety. Since he was injured while working for me, I naturally won't leave him be. The beam of divine light from the sky-turning mirror shifted from Yun Ruoyan's body to Thunderbolt Bashan's. Only when Thunderflame saw that Pai Bashan's face was slowly regaining some color did he finally relax. He looked at Yun Ruoyan, who was also lying on the ground, and the hatred in his eyes was so intense that it seemed as if he wanted to tear Yun Ruoyan to shreds to appease even a fraction of his anger. His life is no longer in danger. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the Silver Dragon Elder had finished treating Thunderflame's injuries. Thank you, Great Elder. Thunderflame kowtowed on the ground. First Elder, what should we do with Yun Ruoyan? She was seriously injured last time and hasn't fully recovered yet. The Great Elder said, keep her here first and let her recover from her internal injuries. I'll bring her back in 5 days. Do you still want to treat her? Thunderflame asked carefully. As far as he knew, the demonic and silver dragons were mortal enemies, and the First Elder should have dealt with Yun Ruoyan as soon as he'd captured her. Why would he still want to treat her injuries? More than a decade ago, the First Elder had descended from the extreme Abyss continent the day after he'd captured Yun Ruoyan. Why would Yun Ruoyan still have to stay here for 5 days? I need Yun Ruoyan in perfect condition. The Silver Dragon Elder could naturally see Thunderflame's confusion. As for why, that's not for you to ask. Just remember, I want to see Yun Ruoyan in perfect condition in 5 days. Yes, Elder, don't worry. I won't disappoint you in 5 days, Thunderflame replied. But Yun Ruoyan is too cunning, and her spiritual sword is too powerful. If she fully recovers her cultivation, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep her here. Just use the seal of the sky-turning seal to lock her up. I doubt she'll be able to break out of it, the Silver Dragon Elder instructed. When Yun Ruoyan woke up, she found herself lying in a pillar of white light that came from a mirror not far from her. Yun Ruoyan squinted, still a little dazed, and slowly remembered that this was the same mirror she'd seen in the hunting grounds. Yun Ruoyan looked away from the mirror and around her. All she could see was darkness, and there was nothing else in the enclosed space other than the mirror. It looks like I've been locked up by that old man, Thunderflame. Yun Ruoyan guessed that since the Ghost Master was Thunderflame's subordinate, being captured by the Ghost Master meant that she was in Thunderflame's hands. Thunderflame, Ghost Master, Thunderflame. Yun Ruoyan shouted at the top of her lungs, but other than her own voice, there was no other sound. Mistress, Chocho's voice rang out in Yun Ruoyan's mind once more. Look at that mirror. When Yun Ruoyan heard Chocho's words, she turned her attention back to the mirror. What about the mirror? Yun Ruoyan asked. Doesn't that mirror look like the all-seeing mirror? Chocho asked. Yun Ruoyan confirmed that the sky-turning mirror was indeed somewhat similar to the all-seeing mirror. Chocho continued, if the all-seeing mirror can communicate with the silver dragons on the upper continents, then could this mirror be able to do the same? If it's possible, then the Thunderbolt family might be the minions of the Silver Dragon clan, acting on the orders of the Silver Dragon clan. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that my father was captured by the Silver Dragons? Yun Ruoyan continued Chocho's train of thought. Very likely, Chocho replied. Chocho said, the Silver Dragons must have captured you to prevent you from reviving the Demon Dragon tribe. In that case, could my mother have also been captured by the Silver Dragons? I don't think so, Chocho replied. Your mother was immortal, and she had already given birth to you. If they wanted to capture you, they would have captured you, not your mother. Chocho also told Yun Ruoyan that the cultivators of every continent had their own rules, and that they couldn't do as they pleased. For example, the cultivators of the Heiyuan continent couldn't do as they pleased on the Qinyuan continent, and the Silver Dragons of the Extreme Abyss continent couldn't do as they pleased on the Heiyuan continent or the Qinyuan continent. This rule had been set by the cultivators of the lower and mid-tier continents after they'd helped the Silver Dragons exterminate the demonic dragons, and they'd all sworn oaths to abide by it. It seems that after 1,000 years, the Silver Dragons have become disobedient. They don't dare to do as they please on the mid-tier and low-tier continents, so they've decided to raise their own minions. It's highly likely that the Thunderflame family is one of their minions. Yun Ruoyan thought for a moment. Chocho suddenly has an idea, but I'm not sure if it'll work. What is it, mistress? Let's hear it. If the Silver Dragons want to capture me, then perhaps I'll be able to see my father again. And Liamo has been looking for a way to get to the Silver Dragon's lair. You can't. Before Yun Ruoyan could finish, Chocho interrupted her. Mistress, if you allow yourself to be captured by the Silver Dragons, you'll be a lamb walking into a tiger's den. You mustn't take such a risk. Mistress, I've noticed that ever since you've arrived on the Qinyuan continent, you've become very adventurous. That time, you went to the Spirit Crystal Mine with the Beast Cloaks, and this time, you stayed in an inn in the darkest lands, and you broke through the bracelet's power. Now, you're actually going to the Extreme Abyss continent. You weren't like this before. In the past, Yun Ruoyan had dared to do anything she wanted, but that was only if she had a certain degree of confidence. She wasn't like now, where she'd do whatever she wanted without regard for the consequences. Now that you mention it, it does seem like it. Yun Ruoyan sat cross-legged on the ground, thinking about Chocho's words. I don't know why, but I keep feeling the urge to take risks, and I'm not afraid of getting hurt at all. Every time I get hurt, I feel like I've been reborn. It might not be a misconception, Chocho said after a moment's thought. Perhaps it's because of the demonic dragon blood in your body. The demonic dragon blood in my veins. That's right. As far as I know, the demonic dragon race is extremely adventurous, and their bloodlines naturally carry this trait. A portion of the demonic dragon blood in your veins has already awakened. Although it's only a small portion, it's still having a significant impact on you. Mistress, with your current cultivation, you'll have to restrain yourself. If you do something irreversible in the heat of the moment, you'll be in deep trouble. Chocho had also been frightened by Yun Ruoyan's repeated actions, and it was trying its best to convince her otherwise. I understand, Yun Ruoyan replied. I'm afraid that this time, it's not that I'm willing to take the risk, but that I'm trapped here and can't get out at all. Look at this wall of restrictive spells. Yun Ruoyan reached out and touched the pillars of light around her. Although they looked like ordinary pillars of light, they were as hard as an iron wall. Mistress, don't worry, Li Mo will definitely find this place, Cho assured. Li Mo can break through a barrier of this level with a single punch. Will Li Mo really be able to find this place? Yun Ruoyan asked Cho. How can you be so sure? Because I can already sense Li Mo's aura, but because of this restrictive spell, I can't communicate with him. In that case, Li Mo must be nearby. Yun Ruoyan stood up excitedly. In fact, not only was Li Mo nearby, he had already entered the city lord's manor. In the morning, he had disguised himself as a farmer delivering vegetables to the city lord's manor, then concealed himself within it. It had been a day since Yun Ruoyan had been captured, and Li Mo could sense Cho's mental energy, but he couldn't communicate with her, nor could he determine her exact location. Li Mo didn't know what was going on, and he was very anxious. Li Mo was rather familiar with the city lord's manor, especially the few hidden prisons. Li Mo had searched through them one by one, but he hadn't found any traces of Yun Ruoyan. In that case, there was only one place that Li Mo knew of but hadn't checked, the hidden prison beneath Pai Beishan's room. Li Mo, Qin Feng, and Lin Tianming had all been imprisoned there. At the moment, Li Mo was hiding in a fake mountain in Pai Beishan's manor, quietly waiting for the night to come. Then, he would sneak into Pai Beishan's prison. Chapter 394. Although Thunderclap Beishan's life was no longer in danger thanks to the First Elder's treatment, his broken arm was still a serious injury. Furthermore, he had expended a great deal of spiritual energy during the battle, and his spiritual vortex had been shaken. As a result, he had been recuperating in his own room. The courtyard was heavily guarded, and there were even 2 guards guarding the door to Thunderclap Beishan's room. However, this wasn't a problem for Li Mo. The sky had finally darkened. Just as Li Mo was about to make use of the darkness to avoid the patrolling guards and kill the guard at the gate, a person walked into the courtyard. Second young city lord. The 2 guards at the gate saluted the newcomer. This newcomer was none other than Thunderbolt. At ease, Thunderclap Yang replied. How's my brother? It's nothing serious. He just has some minor injuries that he needs to recuperate from, one of the 2 guards replied. He was Thunderbolt Tyrant's personal guard. Alright, I'll go in and take a look. Thunderclap Yang pushed open the door and entered the room. When Li Mo saw this, he used his movement technique to sneak to a corner of the courtyard. Then, using the wall, he silently made his way to the roof. He peeled off the roof tiles and peered into the room. Brother, what happened to you? Thunderclap Yang stood by Thunderclap Beishan's bed. My life's been spared, but my arm's been crippled. Thunderclap Beishan's tone was a little dispirited. Losing an arm had been a huge blow to him, but more than that, he was filled with hatred. I wonder if that Qin Feng was struck dead by father's lightning. I hope not, or I'd be letting him off too easily. I'll make sure to scrape his flesh off his bones to appease the hatred in my heart. And Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan, I won't let either of them off. Of course we won't let them off for injuring brother this badly, Thunderclap Yang added. Thunderbolt chimed in, I heard from the servants that you've brought back 2 people this time. I wonder if they're that damned Li Mo and Yun Ruoyan. If they are, I'll go take care of them right now and avenge you. Li Mo couldn't help but lean closer to the entrance of the cave to get a clearer view of the situation inside. We did bring back 2 people, but Li Mo wasn't there, Thunderclap Batian replied. If not Li Mo, then who could it be? It's Shui Feng and that Yun Ruoyan's. It's all because I wanted to capture that Yun Ruoyan that I ended up in this state. If you have the chance, you have to take good care of her for me, Thunderbolt Batian gritted his teeth. After exchanging some pleasantries with Pai Batian, Liemo could tell from Pai Batian's tone that Yun Ruoyan wasn't in his hands. Thus, he gave up on the idea of exploring the secret prison and followed behind Thunderbolt. Yes, Steward Hu. Go and rest, Thunderbolt said to Steward Hu, who had been following him all this while, before closing the door. Guard the door well. Pay more attention to the security of the house these few days, the man with a mustache said to the guard outside the door and left. Thunderclap walked up to the table and lit the lamp. A black silhouette suddenly appeared in front of Thunderclap. Who? Thunderclap was about to scream when he felt a sharp pain in his throat. A cold, powerful hand had gripped his neck. Liemo moved his face closer to the light of the lamp. When Thunderclap saw Liemo, his mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His face grew redder and redder. Don't scream, or I'll kill you immediately, Liemo said coldly before loosening his grip. Ice Cube Face, are you here to save Yun Ruoyan? Yes, do you know where she's being held? I don't know, Thunderclap replied honestly. Then I'm sorry, second young master, but I'll have to trouble you to be my captive. I want to use you to exchange for Yen. Liemo was certain that Yun Ruoyan had been hidden in some unknown place, and he wouldn't be able to find her if he searched around aimlessly. As a result, he suddenly thought of using Thunderclap as a hostage. However, Thunderclap suddenly laughed bitterly. What are you laughing at? Liemo asked curiously. I'm laughing at how you're going to make the same mistake as Yun Ruoyan. Thunderclap recalled how Yun Ruoyan had used him as a hostage to escape from the inn. Although I'm the young lord of the Thunderclap family, compared to my brother, I'm a dispensable existence. I had to cripple one of my brother's arms to capture Yun Ruoyan, and father won't let her go for my sake. You should give up on this idea. Yun Ruoyan had used a bewitching powder on Thunderclap in the inn, but what she didn't know was that the scions of the large families had undergone professional training from a young age in order to ensure their own safety and to prevent themselves from being easily manipulated by others. As a result, Yun Ruoyan's bewitching powder hadn't affected Thunderclap at all, and he had pretended to be affected in order to help Yun Ruoyan. However, what he hadn't expected was that Thunderclap, who had always doted on him, would sacrifice him to capture Yun Ruoyan. And this time, when Thunderclap had carried Thunderclap back to the manor, Thunderclap had seen it happen. He had seen Thunderclap carry Thunderclap into his room to treat his wounds, and when Thunderclap had escaped from danger, Thunderclap had stayed by his bedside for an entire day and night, only leaving when Thunderclap had awoken. Thunderclap's heart was filled with indescribable bitterness. He could clearly see that, in the eyes of both the Thunderclap family and Thunderclap, he was nothing more than a dispensable existence. But I can help you save Yun Ruoyan, Thunderbolt Yang continued after taking a deep breath. You're willing to help me? Liemo frowned. Why? Because. Thunderclap was about to say that he liked her, but when he saw Liemo's cold gaze, he swallowed his words. If I were to tell you the reason, you'd probably beat me to death right now. Once I've rescued Yun Ruoyan, you can ask her. She'll know. Liemo didn't want to waste time on such a trivial matter. Even if he didn't trust Thunderclap, there was no other way for him to find Yun Ruoyan. If you lie to me, I'll kill you immediately, Liemo threatened, then removed his hand from Thunderclap's neck. Thunderclap rubbed his neck to relieve the numbness. I don't know where Yun Ruoyan is being held, but if she's not in my brother's secret prison, then she must be in a secret chamber at my father's 5th high school. A secret chamber in Thunderclap's bedroom. Liemo's eyes gleamed. Yes, there's a secret chamber in my father's bedroom, but I only know of its existence. I don't know how to open it. Thunderclap looked at Liemo's bright eyes. That's why we can't go to my father's room without careful consideration. If we're discovered, not only will you and I be in danger, but Yun Ruoyan will also have no one to save. Do you have a good idea? Liemo asked. Thunderclap thought for a moment. I do have a plan. My brother has lost an arm, and he hates you to the core. If he can't catch you, he'll definitely vent his anger on someone else. What do you mean? I'll go and provoke my brother over the next 2 days, and when he goes to vent his anger, I'll follow him. Perhaps we'll be able to find Yun Ruoyan, Thunderclap suggested. Liemo could tell that Thunderclap was a vengeful man, and Thunderclap's plan was perfect for Thunderclap. Alright, let's do that, Liemo agreed. In Thunderclap's study, Thunderclap wrote 3 letters and handed them to 3 warriors, instructing them to deliver them to the heads of the Wu, Lai, and Qin families as soon as possible. Patriarch, have you really decided to do this? The Ghost Master asked Thunderclap. Thunderclap's 3 letters were intended to form an alliance with the Wu, Lai, and Qin families against the Feng family. The Hua family and Jing family had always been on good terms with the Feng family. Naturally, they were treated as enemies by Thunderflame. In his letter, he said that he wanted to work together with the 3 families to accomplish a great task. The so-called great task was to annihilate the Feng family, the Hua family and the Jing family. Thunderclap even made it clear that he was willing to accept the smallest amount of profit, as long as he could kill Liemo and Qin Feng, as well as remove the thorn in his side. The Feng family is practically riding on my head. If I don't do something soon, there will be no place for the Thunderclap family on the Qinyuan continent. Thunderclap slammed the table. Everyone had a sore spot, and Thunderclap's was Thunderclap Batian. Thunderclap's loss of an arm had infuriated Thunderclap. For the past few centuries, the Qinyuan continent has only had 7 cities, and the ones that have been destroyed have generally been the smaller ones. Won't your actions incur the displeasure of the higher-ups? The Ghost Master asked worriedly. Ever since the Divine Mirror of Heaven broke 20 years ago, the Qinyuan continent has lost all communication with the higher-ups. In the entire continent, I'm the only one who can use the mirror to communicate with the first elder of the Silver Dragons. Thunderclap didn't seem worried at all. I've done a great service by capturing Yun Ruoyan. As long as I work for the first elder wholeheartedly, he won't blame me for such a small matter. If that's the case, it's a good idea, the Ghost Master replied. The Ghost Master left Thunderclap's room and went straight to a dungeon not far from his room, where Zhuyi Feng was imprisoned. In the dark, damp dungeon, Zhuyi Feng was suspended in the air by chains. His body was riddled with crisscrossing whip marks, and his entire body was drenched in blood. At the moment, his head was drooping, and he was unconscious. How's it going? Still not giving in. The Ghost Master walked in and asked a bearded warrior holding a metal whip. Chapter 395. Ghost Master, this person's temper is much harder than his skin. The bearded warrior with the iron whip pointed at Zhuyi Feng, who was covered in blood. Wake him up. The Ghost Master narrowed his cold eyes and looked at Zhuyi Feng. The bearded warrior picked up a bucket of cold water from the ground and poured it over Zhuyi Feng's head. It was already late autumn and winter was approaching. When the bone-chilling cold water was poured on Zhuyi Feng's body, it was like thousands of needles were pricking him at the same time. It was many times more painful than the whip wounds on his body. Zhuyi Feng frowned and woke up from his coma. Then, he saw the Ghost Master standing in front of him. Don't think that I will agree to sign a contract with you. Zhuyi Feng looked at the Ghost Master and was the first to speak. There was a hint of pride in his tone, as if he had won a battle. I have seen many people who are not afraid of death, but I have never seen anyone who is not afraid of pain. The Ghost Master stretched out his ghostly hand and grabbed Zhuyi Feng's hair, forcing him to look up at him. The Ghost Master continued, as long as you sign a contract with me and become my ghost slave, you will no longer have to abide by these sins. Bah! Feng spat on the ghost master's face and said, "Even if I die, I will still be my own ghost. You want me to submit to you? Dream on." The ghost master wanted to refine Feng into his ghost slave, but this required Feng to voluntarily sign a slave contract with him. Only then could he further extract Feng's soul and refine it. Feng naturally would not submit. He had been subjected to 108 tortures, but he did not have the slightest intention of relenting. When an ordinary person was beaten to the point where they wished they were dead, their spirit would completely collapse and they would agree to sign a contract. However, Feng seemed to be an exception. If that's the case. The ghost master put his hand into his hood and wiped his face. He slowly said, "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." After saying that, the ghost master took out a red bottle from his bosom. He uncorked the bottle and revealed a red, slender worm that was constantly wriggling inside. "What do you want?" Feng sensed the danger and asked. "It's not too late for you to regret it now." The ghost master said gloomily, "Otherwise, once my soul-eroding worm enters your body, you will really wish you were dead." Feng, on the other hand, still had a stubborn look on his face. Seeing this, the ghost master used his long fingernails to scratch Feng's arm. The sharp nails immediately drew a line of blood on his skin. Then, the ghost master placed the soul-devouring worm in his hand beside the wound on Feng's arm. The soul-eroding worm drilled into Feng's body through his wound. Feng could clearly see a long bulge on his arm. The bulge swam up along Feng's arm, all the way to Feng's head. Shuao! Feng let out a painful groan. The soul-devouring worm had entered Feng's brain, and Feng felt like it was eating away at his soul. It was a kind of pain that was twice as intense as the pain in the bone marrow. Physical pain will make you faint. The ghost master's cold voice rang in Feng's ear, but the pain of the soul-eroding worms devouring your soul will make you more and more awake. You will clearly feel every bit of pain. Enjoy it, ha ha ha. The ghost master's sinister laughter grew further and further away, but just as he had said, Feng could feel the bone-eroding and soul-devouring pain in his mind becoming clearer and clearer. Within a secret chamber in Thunderflame's bedroom, Yunruoyan's eyes were closed as she recuperated. The wordless book appeared in her mind again. The book automatically flipped to the second page, and then words gradually appeared on it. It was the part of the divine dragon technique that she could understand the most recently. Those words seemed to possess some sort of power. As long as Yunruoyan looked at them, her body would enter a meditative state. After an indeterminate amount of time, when she opened her eyes, a red light flashed across them. "Mistress, how are you feeling?" Qiu asked hurriedly. Yunruoyan wasn't in a hurry to answer Qiu's question. Instead, she sent a sliver of her consciousness into her spiritual vortex, where she could once again see her own spiritual energy transforming into a black mist. In addition, the saintly spirit crystal in her bracelet had once again come into play, constantly releasing spiritual energy to nourish Yunruoyan's spiritual vortex. Although Yunruoyan's injuries had all healed, and her ruptured spiritual vortex had mostly healed, her cultivation hadn't been fully restored. As a result, the saintly spirit crystal wasn't as effective as it was supposed to be. With the nourishment of the saint spirit crystal, Yunruoyan's spiritual vortex was once again filled to the brim after an entire night of cultivation. Qiu. Yunruoyan's voice was filled with suppressed excitement. "I feel like I'm about to break through." "Mistress, you're about to break through." Qiu's voice was a little surprised. Yunruoyan had only recently become a mid-9th rank blade master, but she was about to break through again so quickly. "Mistress, if you break through again, you'll be a peak 9th rank blade master, and you'll only be one step away from becoming a sword saint. Isn't this progress a little too fast?" Qiu was finally excited. If Yunruoyan were to break through, it would be able to borrow her strength to try and break through the silver bracelet seal. Chocho, have you noticed that I break through every time I'm injured? Do you think this is the effect of the divine dragon's power? Mistress, from what you've said, it's quite possible. As the two of them spoke, the door to the secret chamber was pushed open. Thunderflame's personal guard entered, placing a red wooden box on the floor and pushing it into the pillar of light. Because Yunruoyan had already reached the point where she didn't need to eat, no one brought her 3 meals a day. However, someone would bring her high-grade spiritual pills every day. These pills were incredibly rare and precious, and were one of the reasons why Yunruoyan was able to recover so quickly. What do you want, exactly? The guard placed the box down and was about to leave when Yunruoyan's voice rang out from behind him. You'll know in 2 days, the guard replied. What happens in 2 days? Yunruoyan asked, and the guard left without looking back. No matter what happened in 2 days, what Yunruoyan needed to do right now was to cultivate as fast as possible. Just a little bit of cultivation would increase her chances of escaping. While the Thunderflame family was busy trying to win over the other major families to deal with the Feng family, the Feng family wasn't idle either. When the Count of Feng returned, he reported his identity to Feng Yicheng. Feng Yicheng sent his son, Feng Mian, to the Hua and Jing families to convince them to help him in future battles. Although the two families were on good terms with the Feng family, they were still a little hesitant to oppose the Thunderflame family. The head of the Jing family finally agreed after a long period of consideration, but the Hua family decided not to help either family. Feng Yicheng received news that the Wu, Lai, and Chen families had all allied with the Thunderflame family, but he only had the Jing family as his ally. The difference in strength was still too great. Just then, Feng Yicheng brought news. After a long period of activity in Thunderflame City and a few other cities, the troop had successfully won over nearly 100 smaller families who were willing to submit to them. Although these families were weak, 100 of them could still be considered a force strong enough to resist a major family. Patriarch, there's one family we might be able to fight for, Feng Yicheng said to Feng Yanyang. Which family? Feng Yanyang asked. The Lai family. Feng Yicheng said, Lai Fenglan used to be the head of the Lai family, but ever since Lai Yun was poisoned by the corpse poison, Lai Fenglan has been in seclusion to prolong Lai Yun's life. The Lai family is now controlled by his son, Lai Senator. I've interacted with him before, and he seems to be someone we can negotiate with. Alright, in that case, I'll leave this matter to you, Feng Yanyang said. He then turned to the Count of Feng. How is young Masterly doing in Thunderflame City? Even if we manage to save him, it won't be easy for him to escape. Go and help him. Yes, Patriarch. Although Count of the Wind agreed, his tone was rather worried. Chapter 396. Thunderbolt waved his hand at the maidservant. The maidservant was used to reading people's eyes, so she immediately understood that the second city lord wanted her to lie low until the limelight blew over. The maid crept up and left. Thunderbolt continued, Brother, it seems to me that you're angry, and that's why you hate everything you see. You need to get rid of that anger. But how? Thunderbolt Batian had been cooped up in his room for the past few days, the pain of losing his arm almost driving him insane. You're transferring your own pain to someone else. Thunderbolt looked at Thunderbolt Batian and murmured, Brother, didn't you think of such a simple method? That's right. Why didn't I think of such a simple method? Thunderbolt Batian mumbled to himself. Brother, I'll make the arrangements. Do you want to be a hunter or a beast? However, Thunderbolt Batian waved his hand. I'm a little tired today, so let's do it another day. He lay down, as if he didn't want to talk anymore. Then rest well, brother. I'll come visit when I'm free. Thunderbolt Batian left Thunderbolt Batian's room and returned to his own. How is it? Liamo asked as soon as Thunderbolt Badian entered his room. Not much of a problem. Just stay in my brother's courtyard tonight, and he'll most likely bring you to Yunruoyan. Thunderbolt sat down on a chair by the table, his face expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or unhappy. Deceiving his own brother and betraying his own family was something he had never even considered, but he had done it. How are you so sure? Liamo asked worriedly. What if he doesn't go? Do you have any other ideas? I know my own brother very well. Thunderbolt smiled bitterly and said, when I was young, he brought me out to ride a horse. In the end, the horse threw him off and injured his leg. When he came back, he couldn't take it anymore and rushed back that very night to kill the horse. Only then was his anger appeased. Now that he's lost an arm, you can imagine how angry he is. Since he can't hurt you, he'll definitely vent all his anger on your woman. Upon hearing Thunderbolt's words, Liamo shot to his feet, clenching his fists. I won't give him that chance. How is it? Did he nod? Outside the cell, the Ghost Master asked the bearded warrior. Not yet, Big Beardy said as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Ghost Master, why don't you go and take a look yourself? There's no need. When he gives in, send someone to inform him. After saying that, the Ghost Master left. Another layer of sweat appeared on Big Beardy's forehead. Then, he gritted his teeth and walked into the inner room of the noisy room. Shui Feng, who was chained up in the middle of the cell, had been tortured to the point where he didn't look like a human or a ghost. At first, he would yell and scream in pain, but now he seemed to have gotten used to the pain. The bearded man's eyes instantly lost their luster, and his expression instantly became dull. Grandpa won't kill you, but you'll be a walking corpse from now on. Ha ha ha. Shui Feng laughed, but he suddenly stopped halfway. Shui Feng opened his mouth and said as if he was talking to himself, this is just a small fry. The person who needs to be dealt with is outside. This time, the voice was not the evil and hoarse voice, but Shui Feng's own voice. He said, I want to go out now and raise this place to the ground. Wait, you can't. The evil voice sounded again, and its tone was a little embarrassed. This demon lord has just woken up not long ago, and my skills have not fully recovered. So, it's better to hold off on raising this place to the ground. If that's the case, then I'll go kill the Ghost Master first. Shui Feng said. Wait. The evil voice stopped him again. I haven't recovered much of my skills, so I can't waste it. It's better to outsmart him. The Ghost Master was cultivating in his room when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Ghost Master. It was the bearded warrior's voice. He gave in. Shui Feng gave in and agreed to sign a contract with you. When the Ghost Master heard this, he immediately laughed in a hoarse voice. He thought to himself, as expected, no one can withstand the torture of the soul-devouring worms. He then hurriedly got out of bed and followed the bearded warrior to the dungeon. Because he was too excited, the Ghost Master did not notice the abnormality of the bearded man. The two of them quickly arrived at the dungeon. Chapter 397. In the dungeon, Shui Feng was suspended in midair, his head drooping, as if he were on the brink of death. So, have you thought it through? The Ghost Master walked up to Shui Feng's side and asked. Shui Feng nodded silently, then closed his eyes and said weakly, I agree to sign a contract with you. You can take the soul-devouring worm out of my body now. That won't be necessary. The Ghost Master smiled. In order to refine you into a ghostly slave, the soul-devouring worm is a necessary procedure. However, as long as you sign a contract with me, you won't feel any pain. Oh. Is that so? Feng's weak voice suddenly changed into a raspy, evil voice. At the same time, Feng opened his Skara eyes and looked directly at the Ghost Master. The Ghost Master's heart trembled. Just as he was about to react, Feng landed from midair, a metal chain in his hand. The Ghost Master reached out to grab Feng, but Feng used the chain to bind the Ghost Master's hand. The Ghost Master suddenly broke the chain, allowing the Ghost Master to retreat. But Feng was blocking the door, and the Ghost Master couldn't escape. "Who are you?" the Ghost Master asked in a hoarse voice. "I'm your grandfather." After saying that, the evil voice took out a black whip and lashed it at the Ghost Master. The Ghost Master had only just dodged to the side when the whip seemed to have a life of its own. With a slight twist, the whip wrapped itself around the Ghost Master's neck. The whip was wrapped tightly around the Ghost Master's neck, and the more he struggled, the tighter it got. Just as the Ghost Master was about to be strangled to death, the Ghost Master suddenly reached into his robes and pulled out the bottle containing the demon spirit. Just as he was about to open it, Feng kicked the bottle into the air, and reached out to catch it. "This belongs to Ruoyan, so I'll return it to its rightful owner." He had personally seen the Ghost Master release this thing at Feng Yicheng's manor, and he had heard their conversation. He knew that Gue may have become a ghostly beast, and that it belonged to Yun Ruoyan. Don't kill me." The Ghost Master finally began to beg in fear. "If you promise not to kill me, I'll help you remove the soul-devouring worm from your body. Otherwise, you'll be tortured by it for the rest of your life." Ga. The moment Feng opened his mouth, his voice suddenly changed and he let out a series of evil laughter. His eyes also became pitch black without the whites of his eyes. "Your puny soul-devouring bug is nothing to this supreme being. I've already digested it." "Ah." The Ghost Master widened his eyes and said in despair, "You actually digested it?" "Yes, Gagaga." The demon spirit obviously liked to see people begging and despairing, but then his voice turned into Feng's. "I can spare your life, as long as you take me to Yun Ruoyan right now. Once we save her, I'll let you go." "Are you telling the truth?" The Ghost Master immediately said, "Swear it." Feng was so eager to save Yun Ruoyan that he didn't hesitate to swear an oath. Then, the Ghost Master led them out of the dungeon and toward the secret chamber Yun Ruoyan was in. At dusk, Liemo once again dispatched more guards to Thunderclap's courtyard and hid himself. Thunderclap sat alone in the courtyard, staring blankly as he waited for news. He thought that Liemo would immediately leave with Yun Ruoyan after she was rescued, and that he wouldn't have a chance to see her again. He also thought that his father would be furious after Yun Ruoyan was rescued, but he'd done it discreetly and wouldn't be able to trace it back to him. On the other hand, his brother, Thunderclap, wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. But he also knew that his brother wouldn't be punished. Ever since he'd lost his arm, he'd become Thunderclap's favorite. Thunderclap's previous strictness toward him was completely gone. Now, all he cared about was his eldest son, and Thunderclap, the youngest, had been completely neglected. Thunderclap couldn't help but feel his heart ache. Ever since he was young, he'd thought that his father had doted on him the most. No matter how weak his cultivation was, he wouldn't be scolded, and he didn't have to do much for the family. All he had to do was eat, drink, and be merry. Although Thunderclap wasn't particularly affectionate toward him, he'd never scolded or hit him. In fact, he wasn't affectionate toward Thunderclap either. Thunderson had often been happy that he was doted on by his father, but it wasn't until Yun Ruoyan had used him as a hostage that he finally understood that his father wasn't doting on him at all. Rather, he was merely treating him as a dispensable existence. "Greetings, Patriarch." Just as Thunderclap was thinking about this, Stewart who suddenly called out, "Second young master, the Patriarch is here." Thunderclap froze. When he raised his head and saw Thunderclap walking toward him, he immediately stood up and bowed. Father. Such a respectful greeting surprised Thunderclap. Thunderclap had always been impolite in front of Thunderclap. Although he hadn't forgotten his manners, he'd never been so respectful before. No need for formalities, Thunderclap said, then sat down beside Thunderclap. Thunderclap was already standing by his side. In the past, he'd been spoiled and arrogant, but now that he knew his place in Thunderclap's heart, he didn't dare act rashly. You sit as well. Thunderclap glanced at the somewhat restrained Thunderclap. Only then did Thunderclap sit down on a stone bench opposite him. Thunderclap, I'm here to discuss something with you, Thunderclap said hesitantly. Father, what's the matter? Thunderclap was a little flattered. Thunderclap had never discussed something with him in such a serious manner, and this was the first time Thunderclap had come to this courtyard in the 10 years he'd lived in it. It seemed like this wasn't a small matter. This matter is a little difficult, and I've thought about it for a long time before I made this decision. I hope you can understand my efforts, Thunderclap replied earnestly. Thunderclap frowned. Thunderclap had said that he wanted to discuss the matter with him, but in reality, he'd already made his decision. Father, what's the matter? Thunderclap asked. I've discussed with a number of physicians how to treat your brother's broken arm. Thunderclap glanced at Thunderclap's arm as he spoke, and Thunderclap felt as if his gaze were cold. The treatment is to reattach your brother's other arm. Oh. Thunderclap grunted in response, the muscles on his face twitching slightly. This is indeed a good idea. We have so many warriors in our family, and they're all strong and strong. Their arms. Thunderclap stammered. The apothecary said. Thunderflame interrupted him, it's best to use the arm of a blood-related person. Father. Thunderclap's body trembled as he looked up at Thunderclap. Why? Why? Why must I be sacrificed? Is my arm not an arm? It'll hurt too. Thunderclap frowned. Your brother is the heir of the Thunderclap family, the future hope of the family. I can take care of you for the rest of your life, but what will happen to the Thunderclap family if your brother loses his arm? Why can my brother inherit the Thunderclap family, but I can't? The youth stood up and stared stubbornly at Thunderclap. With a loud bang, Thunderclap slammed his palm on the stone table, shattering it into pieces. He raised his voice, how can I not know what you're made of? I've taken care of you for so many years, but you refuse to cooperate when it's time to use you. Thunderflame also stood up and coldly looked at the youth. He then coldly ordered, men, tell me about the second young master. From today onwards, you are not allowed to take a single step out of the courtyard. Otherwise, I will kill you. Yes, Patriarch, the 10 or so warriors in the courtyard responded in unison, announcing that Thunderclap had been imprisoned. As Thunderclap watched Thunderclap's departing figure, his heart filled with sadness and disappointment, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Second young master, you have to take care of yourself. Steward Who hurriedly consoled him, then helped him into his room. Steward Who, Thunderclap whispered. Second young master, what orders do you have for me? Steward Who looked at Thunderclap, his heart aching for him. Go to the front yard and keep watch. If Liamo needs help, you have to help him save Yunruoyan, Thunderclap instructed. Liamo had been hiding in Thunderclap Bashan's courtyard for almost 2 hours. Even as the sky darkened, there was still no movement. Liamo couldn't help but feel a little anxious. But just then, Thunderclap Batian arrived. He entered Thunderclap Bashan's room, and the two of them discussed something for an hour before Thunderclap Batian left. Not long after, Thunderclap Batian finally left his room, his face beaming. Thunderclap Batian must have brought him some good news. Second young master, where are you going? One of Thunderclap Bashan's personal guards asked. I'm going out for a walk. Don't follow me, Thunderclap Batian ordered, then walked out of the courtyard. The guards looked at each other, but none of them dared to disobey Thunderclap Bashan's orders. Thunderclap Batian had always been a ruthless man, and ever since he had lost his arm, he had become even more temperamental, causing all of his subordinates to tremble in fear. Li Mo followed Thunderclap Batian into Thunderclap Bashan's courtyard. The guards only bowed when they saw him, and no one dared to question him. In the entire Thunderclap family, only Thunderclap Batian was allowed to freely enter Thunderclap Bashan's courtyard and rooms. Thunderclap Batian swaggered into Thunderclap Bashan's room. The reason he was so fearless was because Thunderclap Batian had told him that he wanted to transplant Thunderclap Bashan's arm to him, but he needed a spiritual herb for external use. At this time, Thunderclap Batian was in his pill-making chambers, and he was going to stay there for an entire night. The thought of having an entire night to torture Yun Ruoyan made him so excited that he wanted to wave his arms around. However, he couldn't do so with only one arm. Looking at his empty sleeve, the hatred in his heart had reached its peak. Even though he had regained his arm, the pain of losing it couldn't be erased. Tonight, he was going to pay Yun Ruoyan back 100-fold. Chapter 398. As soon as he entered Thunderflame's room, he eagerly took out his scarlet whip and opened the door to the secret room behind the bookshelf. Step by step, he walked into the secret room like a ferocious beast ready to slaughter. Yun Ruoyan was immersed in her cultivation when she was suddenly awakened by Qiuqiu's chirping. Qiuqiu said that an unfamiliar aura was approaching, so when Thunderbolt Batian walked into the secret chamber, he saw Yun Ruoyan staring at him with her large, bright eyes. "I've finally met a true master." Yun Ruoyan stood up and looked at Thunderous Flame through the wall of light in front of her. "From your tone, it sounds like you're quite lonely here." Thunderous Flame laughed as he looked at Yun Ruoyan. Yun Ruoyan looked at the whip in his hand and frowned. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" "Ha!" Thunderous Flame laughed coldly as he glanced at his empty sleeves. "Did you see that? My arm was given to me by your man, Li Mo. Naturally, you'll have to bear the consequences of his crimes. Are you here for a private affair?" Yun Ruoyan asked. "What, are you afraid?" Thunderous Flame cracked the whip in his hand as he spoke, and the crackling of the whip echoed throughout the small chamber. "Humph!" Yun Ruoyan snorted. "If you dare touch a single hair on my head, don't even think about keeping your other arm." When Thunderbolt Batian heard this, the anger that he had been suppressing in his chest suddenly erupted. He raised his whip and lashed it at the light pillar. The light beam from the sky-flipping mirror could trap the people inside, but it couldn't stop the people outside. The whip created sparks from the friction with the air, and when it hit the light beam, it caused the light beam to fluctuate. Yun Ruoyan subconsciously closed her eyes, and a spiritual barrier immediately appeared around her body to protect her. The whip struck Yun Ruoyan's body, but it didn't hurt much, as if the force of the attack had been completely nullified by the barrier around her body. Could it be that my cultivation is so powerful now? Or is this Thunderous Flame just a paper tiger? Yun Ruoyan opened her eyes, only to see a pair of dark, long, and smiling eyes filled with deep longing. I'm here," Li Mo's deep, magnetic voice rang out. "Yes, you're here," Yun Ruoyan replied happily. "I knew you'd come. Stop chatting. Hurry up and get out of here." Qiuqiu's voice suddenly rang out in both Yun Ruoyan and Li Mo's mind. Li Mo's hand was still gripping Thunderbolt Bashan's whip. What had struck Yun Ruoyan had only been the tip of the whip, and all he felt was a weight on his hand. Indeed, Thunderbolt Batian had let go of the whip. "Since you're here, don't leave." Thunderbolt Bashan's voice rang out from behind Li Mo. He was very close to the door, and he only needed 2 steps to get out. Once he closed the door, Li Mo would be locked inside as well. That was indeed his plan, but the moment he took a step forward, Li Mo appeared in front of him, blocking his path. You, don't leave either. Liemo took out his sword and placed it against Thunderbolt Bashan's neck. Just then, the sounds of fighting could be heard from outside the room, but they quickly stopped. Shui Feng, similarly clutching a person's neck, kicked open the door, and walked in. Shui Feng and Liemo looked at each other before exclaiming at the same time, "You're here too." Regardless of the misunderstandings between the two of them, their ultimate goal was the same, and they had fought together before. Yen is in the secret room, trapped by a seal. Your movements just now must have alerted Thunderbolt Batian, so we have to hurry and rescue Yen. Shui Feng nodded in agreement. Shui Feng grabbed one person in each hand, and Liemo returned to the secret room. Now that they'd found Yunruoyan, the ghost master in Shui Feng's hands was no longer of any use. Shui Feng glanced at the ghost master, and when he opened his eyes again, he could see nothing but darkness. No, I'm still useful, don't kill me. The ghost master trembled in fear. You're indeed useful. A voice 10 times more unpleasant than the ghost master's hoarse voice cackled. Your purpose is to be my food. Then, Shui Feng opened his mouth and sucked at the ghost master's hooded face. Wisps of black energy began to flow out of the ghost master's hood and into Shui Feng's nose and mouth. A gust of cold wind blew past, and the ghost master's hood was blown away, revealing a face that no one had ever seen before. It was a face that was as dry as the bark of an old tree. The nose was sunken in, the forehead was sunken in, the chin was sunken in, and the cheeks were devoid of cheeks. As the black energy was sucked into Shui Feng's body through the ghost master's nose and mouth, the withered face became even more withered, until all that was left was a skeleton wrapped in a black robe. This frightening scene unfolded before the eyes of Shui Feng, who was still strangled by Shui Feng's other hand. As a man who'd experienced countless killings, he'd seen even stranger and scarier scenes than this. However, he'd only ever been a bystander, or perhaps the creator. That fear was inflicted on others, and it had nothing to do with him. His only responsibility was to enjoy their terrified expressions and pained wails. But at this moment, the person who had created this horrifying scene was strangling him. Thunderbolt Batian watched as Shui Feng sucked the ghost master's body dry and tossed the ghost master's corpse to the ground like a piece of trash. Then, Shui Feng's black eyes looked at him. They were so cold, so deep, and so strange. It was as if a skeletal hand could reach out from those eyes and gouge out his eyeballs at any moment. Who are you? You're not Shui Feng. Thunderbolt Batian cried out in alarm. Kakik. Shui Feng cackled evilly. I'm him, but I'm also not him. So what? It won't stop me from eating you. Shui Feng opened his mouth and faced Thunderbolt Batian. Just as Thunderbolt Batian was about to lose control of his fear, Shui Feng suddenly closed his mouth and eyes, a conflicted expression on his face. When he opened his eyes again, they revealed a pair of bright eyes with distinct black and white colors. Shui Feng glanced at the ghost master's corpse on the ground and felt a horrible stench in his mouth. Suppressing the disgust in his heart, he muttered to himself, "This person is still useful. You can't eat him." Only then did Thunderbolt Batian finally let out a breath. His face turned from white to green, then from green to red, and finally from purple. Shui Feng's hand that was strangling Thunderbolt Bashan's neck slowly tightened. Clenching his teeth, Shui Feng said to Thunderbolt Batian, "When he's useless, I'll deal with him properly." In the secret chamber, Liemo raised his cultivation to the peak of a peak second-rank blade master, then converted all of his spiritual energy into physical strength and concentrated it on his fist. Yen protect yourself, Liemo instructed Yunruoyan. Yunruoyan nodded, and a barrier of spiritual energy appeared around her body. Only then did Liemo punch out with confidence. With a loud bang, the entire chamber shook, and the pillar of light trembled violently. Liemo punched again, and the trembling pillar of light dissipated. Liamo hugged Yun Ruoyan tightly in his arms, his fingers caressing her neck. There was an indistinct whip mark left behind by Thunderbolt Beishan's whip. Hurry up and leave. There's a large group of people rushing over. Zhuifeng poked his head in and instructed the two of them expressionlessly. Liamo and Yun Ruoyan walked out of the secret chamber, hand in hand. As soon as Yun Ruoyan exited the chamber, her eyes met Zhuifeng's. She was about to speak to him, but he immediately averted his gaze. How dare you? Just then, Thunderbolt's voice rang out from outside. Zhuifeng walked out with Thunderbolt Badian in tow, and Liamo and Yun Ruoyan followed closely behind. Thunderflame and the dozens of warriors from the Thunderflame clan had already surrounded the spacious courtyard with 3 layers to the left and 3 layers to the right. Furthermore, there were still many warriors rushing over from all directions. In an instant, the entire city lord's mansion was like an inescapable net. Not even a fly would be able to escape. Young lord, come and greet the city lord. Zhuifeng grabbed Thunderbolt Badian by the neck and twisted his head toward Thunderbolt. Father, kill me. Thunderbolt Beishan's face had turned purple from Zhuifeng's grip, but he still spoke stubbornly. You rats must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Release my son now, and I'll leave your corpse intact. Thunderbolt said agitatedly. Humph. Liamo stepped forward and laughed coldly. Thunderbolt, if you say that, I'm afraid you won't even be able to leave your son's corpse intact. As he spoke, he retrieved his azure light sword and stabbed it under Thunderbolt Beishan's armpit. Then, he grabbed the hilt of the sword and chopped off Thunderbolt Beishan's other arm as if he were chopping vegetables. This sudden movement caught everyone by surprise. Just like the last time, Thunderbolt Badian was caught off guard and lost an arm, and fresh blood spurted from his mouth. Thunderbolt Badian gritted his teeth and cried out in pain. Tian, Thunderbolt's pained cry reverberated throughout the city lord's manor. Thunderbolt, I'll count to 3 before you let us go. Otherwise, I'll chop Thunderbolt Badian into pieces. Liamo pointed the azure light sword at Thunderbolt Beishan's thigh. 1, 2. Just as Liamo was about to count to 3, Thunderbolt finally relented. Stop, I'll let you go, I'll let you go. Thunderflame said. But you cannot harm my Tian, As long as you let us go, I promise not to harm a single hair on Thunderbolt Beishan's head, Liamo replied. Otherwise, I'll make sure he's buried with me. Alright, I'll let you go. Thunderbolt commanded the surrounding warriors to open up a path. Regardless of whether they were in the sky or on the ground, they all opened up a path for Thunderbolt Badian and Yun Ruoyan. Sword light rose from the feet of Yun Ruoyan, Liamo, and Zhuifeng, and they soared into the sky with Thunderbolt Badian in tow. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.